Water's Edge, he has fleshed out in meticulous detail his own huge and stunningly shitty world. Using in-depth research and the power of his own imagination, Milligan was able to conjure out of thin air every hackneyed character, trite street name, and horseshit backstory in the fictional town of Connors Cove. The complete hack proudly said he has created a universe that readers will feel they can actually reach out and touch. Sources say the prolific writer has not yet been punched repeatedly in the face. In other news, McDonald's opens a new senior citizen play place.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
Where did our music bed go?
I don't know. I was surprised. I was sitting here turning my headphones up like, all right, I still don't hear the music. Something seems weird about this.
Yeah, we'll see if we can figure out what's going on. Welcome to Free Talk Live. It is a talk radio program where normally we have intro music that appears to not be playing for some reason. It's showing as though it is playing on our system, but I don't know what the hell happened.
Okay, well, there's that at least. And
we can sing.
I can see from here that it's not muted on the board, so I mean, that's the obvious.
Strange.
We can do mouth drums.
So anyway, we'll try to figure that out as time goes on, but it appears we are broadcasting the show. So, of course, you can join us, and you can talk about absolutely anything that you want to discuss. The phones are open at 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. 6160. Here in the studio tonight, it's Ian.
And it's Bonnie.
And Arya.
Wow. Okay, so Arya, just moments before the show, I told you about something that I found this weekend. The latest development in the world of artificial intelligence, and once again, AI is changing the game. There were a lot of people who were saying that like a lot of people in the graphics world were saying, Photoshop is hurting. They're dead. They're going to die because, all these other competitors are coming up and there's all this other cool like AI graphic stuff that we've talked about a lot, like Midjourney and DALL-E 2 and Stable Diffusion, all these cool things that are out there that allow you to just generate
Isn't it amazing
imagery.
just how short-sighted people are? Because like 20 years ago, these people were like, photography's dead.
Right.
Photoshop killed it. Photoshop turns into this cheap tawdry whore, and we hate it. It's terrible.
They said the same thing about radio. Video killed the radio star.
Yeah.
There's a song about that.
And yet radio persists.
Radio's still there.
Photography is doing just fine. Photoshop didn't kill it.
And why wouldn't anybody consider or think that Photoshop would use AI technology to its advantage? I mean, that's pretty obvious.
Yeah,
it's cool what came out.
So it seems like they were keeping it to their chest, right? They didn't go out there and say, coming soon. They just released this new update to Photoshop maybe just a few days, like less than a week ago. And you have to pay, I guess a lot of money to have Photoshop. I don't know what it costs, but there's like some sort of monthly fee.
Last I looked into it, there's like a $600 flat fee, but that was like 10 years ago.
I bet you there's like maybe there is a flat fee price and maybe some people pay monthly. I don't know. But
this was long before subscription models took over everything.
That's probably it. So anyway, if you're a subscriber to Photoshop, you have to go to the Photoshop beta option. I guess that's like an option for you.
Oh, it's not fully officially released yet.
Apparently not.
Okay.
And then you activate the beta, and then you have access to their new, what they call, generative fill tool. And now this allows you as an artist or someone who has absolutely zero talent as far as art is concerned, because that's the cool thing about AI artwork is you don't have to know how to do art. You just have to know how to type words. And you type words to tell these generative AI programs what you want to see on the screen. But now this AI art technology has been integrated into Photoshop, which anybody that's been around, the online world for the last 20 years knows that Photoshop is like the top dog as far as editing imagery is concerned.
Yeah, it's curious. I was never very good with Photoshop, but in the early days of my transition, like right before I'd even started on hormones, I used Photoshop a lot. I would take pictures of myself, and then I would do everything I could to like feminize my appearance with Photoshop. And I never got very good at it, but it was the only tool that was even capable of doing something like that. I mean, there were other like free tools, like
Sure.
freeware things, but they were nowhere near as powerful and nowhere near as capable
Now there's
as Photoshop
Facetune,
was.
and everyone can do it on their phone with Facetune.
But if you're good with Photoshop, you're better than the Snapchat filters, because there's a feminize me or masculinize me Snapchat filter.
And those work pretty
some-
good.
Yeah,
Snapchat's
but
not as good as like just doing it on Facetune. Snapchat is like, I don't
or
know.
Facetune as well, right?
That's what I'm talking about.
If you're
Oh.
good with Photoshop, you're better at editing pictures than any of those automatic processes.
Sure, but if you're good with Photoshop, you're probably in the top 1% of like computer users.
Snapchat
right?
is the automatic kind. Facetune is not. Like
Okay.
Facetune does have like one that's just like, oh, turn me into a little boy or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it also is just like you can just sit there and tweak things all day. That's why like you will always have to assume that a celebrity's body doesn't really look like that because they can literally just be like, I'm gonna do this to my waist, like pull it in and pull my butt out.
Right. And so now the other thing you have to assume, and we've been talking about this for some number of years with the rise of deep fakes. That technology has been around now for several years, where you can, swap people's heads into, like take an actor's head and put it on a different actor, or their face and put it on a different actor's face, and do some really amazing stuff. Of course, there's that could affect the 2024 election coming soon, where you don't know if it's real or not when you watch it because
Nice.
it's getting that good.
And that's an interesting aspect of it. But in regard to selfies, I don't understand the appeal of like Photoshop, and now we're going to see the artificial intelligence doing this, of making people prettier or sexier or more attractive than they really are, right?
Because
Like,
eventually someone's going to see them in real life.
Yeah, it's like,
Right.
are you doing it to attract a mate? Because they're gonna want to meet you in real life.
They'll be disappointed
Yep.
if you are faking yourself so much.
and again, in the early days of my transition, I used that as sort of a coping mechanism, I guess, but I phased it out. Then I started using the built-in filters on my phone, and then I phased those out. So now if I upload a picture of me, it's
just
just
you.
straight up me, right?
Yeah.
And maybe
Well, it should be.
Yeah, maybe with some black and white filtering here and there or something like that, or some mild automatic color adjustment or something like that. But that's because when I look at these pictures, I want to know, hey, that's what I actually look like. It does me no good, and it does my self-esteem no good if I plug one of these pictures into an artificial intelligence and go, make me a 10. Right? That doesn't do me any good. I don't understand the mentality of the person who gets some sort of ego boost from doing something like that.
I think it's like, okay, like a lot of people, I'm sure it's an ego boost, but I met this group of people. Well, my friend had a bunch of friends and I hung out with them for his birthday, right? And they were all younger than me, like first year of college, and it was like 2 years ago. So I was like at least like 4 years older than all of them. And this one girl, she was like, please don't post that picture of me. Wait till I Photoshop it and then you can post it. Like, but it wasn't in
Wow.
a like, I just want to look really hot kind of way. It was in a like, I will die if my real face gets out there. It's so embarrassing. It was crazy to me. She talked about how much anxiety she had all the time. And she's in a sorority and she talked about how much the other girls had like pressure on her. They were constantly competing to be completely perfect, and it was so weird. She
I would
was
have to
perfectly
leave
fine looking.
if I was in a conversation with somebody who just wanted to talk about how anxious they were all the time. I just don't care what your problem is. Let's talk about something that is actually meaningful. Let's actually go to the phones here. We got Photoshop. We'll continue with Photoshop here in a moment because it's pretty big news. But first, we have someone calling in. What's your name, caller?
Mikey.
Mikey.
Oh, it is Mikey.
Is this
Mikey the Snack Jew.
Mikey from the Porcupine Freedom Festival, Fork Fest. You're one of the regular vendors at these summertime camping festivals. Are you calling from New Hampshire tonight?
Yes.
All right. Welcome, sir. What's on your mind?
Well, allegedly I'm banned from the Porcupine Freedom Festival. Dennis has not explained why, but
Whoa,
he did message me that I'm not welcome at the festival.
that's so weird. I thought that you just weren't like telling us why yet, and you were going to tell us tonight. You don't even know why he's banning you?
No, I have no idea why.
This is so weird.
And you have not even a speculation as to why?
I have suggestions from third parties that he's made accusations, but without corroboration from him, I don't want to say anything because
Yeah.
I have not heard anything from him.
Was this anything that was taking place, do you think, in any of the Porcupine Freedom Festival chats? Because Dennis also, in whatever little trip he's on, disconnected our Matrix bridge from the Telegram chats.
Whoa.
So I'm not legally allowed to use Telegram. So I have literally no way of using the Porcupine Freedom Festival chats now. And I even emailed Dennis about this, like, hey, was this a mistake? Because, I'm not the only one. Some of us no longer use Telegram. Some of us, like myself, aren't legally allowed to use Telegram. And that it serves no purpose to disconnect this bridge, right?
So weird.
But he did. So there's been arguments going on back and forth there about Maj Toure, whatever his name is.
The Black Guns Matter activist.
And then it moved on to Robert Kennedy and the gun-free zone. And regardless of what happens, it would appear to me that this is the most controversial Porcupine Freedom Festival I've ever seen. From a point of view of the organizer making questionable decisions.
Can he even just ban someone? I mean, when Ian got banned, it was like a whole board decision of the Free State Project, not just
it's a good question.
The person who was running PorcFest just deciding that.
That's not entirely clear. I did look at the terms and conditions of the ticket, and it claims that the producers can say someone's not welcome, but there are, as I understand it, 2 producers. The other one is Constance, who I have not had any issues with at all.
Well, here's another technical question. If you're banned from PorcFest, does that actually ban you from the entirety of Rogers Campground?
That is another good question, because he did say I will help you. I'll help get your deposit back from Rogers, and I have not been refunded for anything yet, so I don't know.
Because there was a time.
PorcFest would say the answer is yes.
I bet they would, but there was a time when the Porcupine Freedom Festival rented the entire park, and they had like total dibs on everything. So at that time, I would say that you would have been banned from the entire park. But then a few years ago,
and I would agree with Aria. I would agree with Aria that this is the most bizarre power trip I've ever seen of organizers.
It is
and I've
bizarre.
been going since 2014.
It's bizarre because, for one thing, he can't even answer anybody. Like, he doesn't feel that anyone needs an explanation. Like, when I told him, this man, Maj Toure, whatever, is literally threatening violence, and that's about the one thing that libertarians are not okay with. Why is he still allowed to come to PorcFest? And he was just like, you don't understand. He didn't really mean that. The screenshot I have.
You're being negative and mean, and we can't have that at Dennis Fest.
How did that whole thing with Maj resolve?
He's still invited to PorcFest, still being paid to come speak at PorcFest for some reason.
He's been explicit on Twitter calling for violence.
Dennis doesn't believe that.
He explicitly said, if I'm at PorcFest, then PorcFest is my community. Keep that in context, he said, alluding directly to his previous tweet about rolling up to stop drag queens in his community.
To
he said he was going
people
to assault anyone who was involved in a drag queen.
But he's not banned. But Mikey, who's never threatened violence against anyone, is.
Have you, Mikey?
No.
I didn't think so.
Yeah, I am curious, and so I actually did reach out to Dennis, who is the organizer of the Porcupine Freedom Festival this year, and I let him know. I said there's a rumor going around that Mikey has been banned from PorcFest, and I said, is there a statement that you have about this? Because I want to get both sides. If there must be another side to this. Apparently, you don't even know, Mikey, the reason you've been banned, and that seems like a strange thing to do, to tell someone they're not welcome somewhere and then not give them an explanation as to why. So I did give him a heads up. I gave it to him within the last couple hours, but he has seen the messages according to the delivery notices here on Twitter, and I have not yet heard back from him on this. When I have invited him to come talk about the previous controversies and, promote PorcFest, because what I've said about the controversies thus far, and I'm not sure about this one yet because we don't know enough to make a decision, but the previous ones, the Maj Toure controversy and the fact that they're inviting scumbag politicians to speak on the main stage, I've said, look, I'm not saying anyone should boycott this event, because I think overall it is still a good event. I have my disagreements with how they're programming the main stage content, but ultimately PorcFest isn't about what's on the main stage. It's about the 2,000 to 3,000 people who are there, and a lot of them are first-time visitors here in New Hampshire, and giving them a good impression of the community here. So there's a reason to still attend the event.
The funniest thing here is he got I understand he got upset that I insinuated he was a dictator, but the best way to prove that you're not a dictator is to start banning people.
Right. That's crazy.
This guy is like an egotistical narcissist
He is.
of levels I've never seen before.
Well, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go
me.
and do name calling. I do
It's not
think
name calling. It's like telling how someone's behaving. I mean, if you were being rude, I could say you're being rude and it wouldn't be name calling.
Sure. And I think that there has been a history over the years of Porcupine Freedom Festival organizers who normally would be very good libertarians. Well, as soon as they get a little bit of power, they start to kind of change their behavior. And
Not an excuse.
no, I'm not making it as an excuse. I just think that that's what happens.
It seems to be when they get used to having that power as well. Because
you don't think they do it their first year out?
I don't think Dennis would have done this 2 years ago. I mean, he certainly didn't ban anyone 2 years ago or last year.
I was friendly with him 2 years ago. We were very good. We were very friendly. Like, what was it, 2021? Got along very well. I don't know what happened.
And the other thing about it is, Mikey isn't just like an attendee who, just is there to drink beers and enjoy the place. He brings value to PorcFest because he cooks every year.
He's also a vendor. I mean, he's got snack stands
24
up
hours.
That's
right?
what I meant, yeah.
where
He
you
cooks,
can just go
right?
by and
That's
grab a
somewhat-
snack and drop a $1 bill in.
Oh,
That's actually where I think this started to some extent, because last year, I've run my snack stand for several years, and last year I usually have like a little bit of shrink, but last year there was $300 worth of shrink, which was about half of the total sales.
Wow.
And I
Whoa.
raised
Shocking.
this issue. I raised this issue in the Telegram chat, and he said, "Stop being negative. Most of the festival is great." And I said, "No, I want this.
Wow.
I'm not expecting to be compensated, but acknowledge that there's an issue here with the growth of the festival. Yeah, it's great we have more people, but I think it's become a little bit unwieldy because there's just so many people here, and then." It went
well,
from
conservatives
Gestapo
don't believe in the
security-
NAP, so
The non-aggression principle?
right.
That too, and it went from like a real Gestapo checkpoints where they would like really, check you over to absolutely nothing. And I think just having like a little person at a gate there would keep the townies out from coming in who don't respect liberty, and they don't understand it, because it used to be you could leave your laptop or a gold bar out and it would be there the next day.
Mm-hmm.
And he banned me from the Telegram chat, and then kept banning me progressively from additional chats, and now the Facebook group, and now the festival. So,
And
Jeez.
what was I know you don't know why he did all of this, but what was the subject of the discussions that you had been having recently?
I haven't said much recently, to be honest.
Well, apparently you called him a
in a
dictator.
while.
He said he called him a dictator at some point, right? So maybe
Well,
he.
I've insinuated that in parts, but
I mean, then don't act like a dictator.
know.
That's
I mean-
easy.
the only thing I've heard from other people is that he's accusing me of disrupting one of his hub chat, like Jitsies or something, or Zoom chats, and I did not do that. And
Wow.
I said that to Constance, and he just believes that it was me.
Even if you
and
did, ban
has
you
not
from
asked for my-
Zoom, right?
And even if that was the case, that's not a reason to ban someone for PorcFest, especially not without saying, like, hey, stop doing this. But I didn't do it. I don't even know who did it or if it even happened.
We got one of our chatters, Jay. He says the owner of Rogers will pretty much do anything that PorcFest requests them to do. They depend on the income to break even for the year. So he's suggesting that a ban from PorcFest may indeed translate into a ban from Rogers, but that
Yeah, that's the way it's run now, I think, is that if the organizers say this guy's got to be, trespassed, then Crosby will do that. But
But it's
this is
unnecessary.
totally unprecedented.
Yeah.
Well,
This
no,
is
it's not
different than,
unprecedented. I mean, they've banned people before. They banned Ian, and they have
Well,
Christopher
yeah, they've banned
Cantwell
people
still banned.
before, but it was for, there were more people. Like, there are people who hate me who are defending me now.
Mhm.
So
I could
this
see
is-
why
this
they
is
would
not like
why
driving
they
around
would.
drunk at
But
the campground. This is not like what Ian was accused of.
Well, we don't
And
even
I'm
know
not
what
saying that
you're
was
being
deserved
accused
either.
of.
I mean, it
I'm
seems
not
like
I'm not even saying that you deserve that, but this is no one's agreeing
There's
with
not a
it.
board going and voting. It just seems like it's just Dennis DMing you. So yeah, it does seem a
well,
little different.
PorcFest is his. That's his claim.
Yeah.
Which is obviously not true. He's just the organizer of this. He didn't put up his own money to do this. It's the Free State Project. They have a budget for this. And I would, if I were you in this case, I would go ahead and push the boundaries and see if, like, okay, fine, you've banned me from PorcFest, so I won't come to the pavilion and the bowl area, which is where the official PorcFest is. For the last few years...
Well, that's the way the rational person views it. But Dennis was clear, I think, 2 years ago, when he said that we were behaving like drunken teenagers, encouraging people to sneak in or whatever by suggesting that PorcFest happened down at the bottom of the hill.
But it did happen down at the bottom of the hill. And that's the big change that they made a few years ago, which was the best thing they could possibly do. I mean, to take people back just 4 or 5 years ago, what was it? It must have been 2019, I think, when there was, for years, there's been this area of PorcFest called Agora Valley, where it's like the first few rows of the RV area. It's kind of close to the pavilion area. That's been the hot zone. That's where if you want to sell the most hamburgers or whatever it is that you're going to be doing, your vendor booth, you want to be in that area.
I think it was 2018.
No, because I was there. I wasn't there in 2018, and I was there for the year that this happened, where there was a migration of the vendors. They all agreed, because the Porcupine Freedom Festival was becoming so controlling at that time. For a freedom festival, it had become this place with all these rules, and you had to pay extra just to get in the Agora Valley spots, and then there was all these vendor rules that came with it, and it was just getting oppressive. And so the vendors...
it was so expensive and complicated. And then a lot of people left, and for those of us who stayed, it was like there was no foot traffic anymore.
Well, right. If you remember the year of the final year where this finally blew up, there was essentially... the vendors who were there regularly came together outside of PorcFest, and they said, we're going to set up our own vendor zone. It's going to be out of Agora Valley. That way we don't have to pay the extraction, essentially the PorcFest tax, to be in that specific spot. And they set up their own row, like 2 rows of the RV site that was, like maybe 6 or 7 rows down. So it was well out of the Agora Valley area, so they weren't paying extra. And then they just started putting up bandit signs to let everybody know. I think they called it where it's at. And that's where literally everyone went. There were maybe 2 or 3 vendors who didn't get the memo and had set up in the Agora Valley, and it was like completely empty. There was no one vending there anymore, and it was basically the market telling PorcFest, y'all effed up, and we're just going to go take our marketplace over here. In fact, some of the vendors that had messed up unknowingly and set up in Agora Valley, they contacted the park and said, we want to move out to where everybody else is.
Yeah, so I can't say I blame them.
Yeah, they moved their sites. And it was after that year that PorcFest made the right move, and they said, you know what, we're not going to rent the whole park anymore. We're just going to rent the pavilion area. We're just going to rent the bowl area. Mikey, did you have more that you wanted to say about this?
Yeah, just a little bit
more. All right, stand by. Mikey's with us here. He's one of the regular vendors at PorcFest. He says he's been banned.
In the meantime, you're welcome at PorcFest.
Indeed, PorcFest is going to go on. We should talk about that. Coming up here, the number 603-283-6160. PorcFest did some decentralization, and it made it a better event. I want to talk about why they didn't go far enough. Coming up. When New Hampshire peacefully leaves the Union, will we have to take on some of the national debt? Let's be clear. That's not national debt. That's federal debt. Debt that was incurred by a bunch of people that we didn't elect, forcing policies on us that we didn't want, and 2.5 million unelected federal bureaucrats. According to Professor Matt Quartrup from Coventry University and the foremost expert on independence referenda, the rule in international law is that political divorce is not like domestic divorce in that there is no alimony due and no obligation to pay the debt incurred by the larger organization. New Hampshire's government is a paragon of fiscal responsibility compared to the United States federal government. We didn't create the national debt, we didn't consent to it, and when we declare peaceful independence, New Hampshire will not owe a single solitary dime of federal debt. You can learn more about how we can peacefully divorce D.C. at nhindependence.org and join the movement at nhexit.us.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has won another 5 years in office, but the country remains divided. He won just over 52% of the vote in a presidential election the opposition has criticised as deeply unfair. Trent Murray's in Istanbul and has the latest.
Hugely consequential election, not just for Turkey, but this part of the world. President Erdogan thanking supporters, thousands of them coming out to celebrate at his home. He said that this was a win not for him or his party, but for his country's 85 million people. But over at the opposition party's HQ, well, the mood was very, very different. They really had been hoping that they could have won this one. They threw everything at it. The opposition leader Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu led 6 different parties under an opposition coalition. They were all quite different, but the one thing they had in common was a desire to boot Erdogan out of office, but it was just not their night. The opposition said that a lot of the media coverage here was unfair. They said the public broadcaster gave a lot more time to the incumbent than the opposition. Crucially, they are not disputing the result.
Nigeria's sworn in a new president. Bola Tinubu polled the highest number of votes during the country's presidential election in February. Our Nigeria correspondent Tessa Makende reports.
Bola Tinubu will be taking over from President Muhammadu Buhari, who has served 2 terms of 4 years each. The new Nigerian president will be facing challenges such as high inflation and insecurity, among others, and there are high expectations from citizens for him to surmount them all. Inflation in the country rose to 22.2% in April, the highest for nearly 18 years. Bola Tinubu says he's aware of the challenges and has vowed to hit the ground running, thereby overcoming them.
Asian markets have rallied in response to news of a US debt deal, following weekend talks between US President Joe Biden and House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy. But China's economy, which is one of the world's biggest holders of US debt, still faces some risk, despite the deal. From Hong Kong, Andrew Wood reports.
Asian shares jumped on Monday, buoyed by news of a US debt deal after months of negotiations and uncertainty among investors. US President Joe Biden and Republican Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy arrived at a deal over the weekend to avoid a catastrophic default on June the 5th. The deal still has to pass through a narrowly divided US Congress. Asian markets start the week on a strong footing, but analysts are warning there are still risks ahead, especially since the deal is not yet in the bag. And all eyes are on China, which experts say, as one of the world's biggest holders of US debt, still faces some degree of risk.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live with our mystery music just not being present.
Yeah, I didn't even notice the lack of outro music. However, I definitely noticed the lack of an incoming intro bed, whatever it's called. I mean, they're music beds, but did we have outro?
Yeah, you know what? Good question. I didn't register it either.
I didn't either.
We're professionals here at Free Talk Live, but the commercials have been playing.
Okay, well, that's good.
But the music hasn't been
That
playing.
would help
It's
solve
very,
a bit
very
of the
strange.
mystery, though, to find it. Okay, note to self. Bonnie's muted.
Oh, I see what happened.
Bonnie's still muted.
I see what happened. Sorry, yeah. Okay. Somebody hit somebody hit one of the buttons on the board.
Oh, it was muted?
Yeah, the music was, it was technical issue here. It was playing, it just wasn't making it to our headphones.
Okay, but people out there were hearing it.
I think so.
Okay.
Maybe.
Well,
Oh my god, that makes us look even dumber.
well, I mean, no, we could evaluate the situation closely,
It's hard to
determine
do
whether or
when
not it
you're on
went
the
out
air.
there. But yeah,
It's hard.
I'm not actually calling you dumb.
Yeah, it's hard.
Just
It's
funny.
hard to do technical things while you're trying to host a show, because obviously hosting the show is the most important thing. And hopefully we're going to have some shows from the Porcupine Freedom Festival. Maybe.
Indeed.
I mean, Aria, you're planning on going. I think
I
the
am.
Captain Kickass is planning on going. Mark may be coming to town for this. So we're still trying to figure out what's going to happen with me. I've still got to have a meeting with my attorney tomorrow about whether or not that's going to even be on the table. So we'll let you know as that develops what that will look like. I think it's going to be a pretty last-minute outing to figure out who's going to be on and when and all those details.
I'm used to hosting it there. Doing it daily without you there to do it with is a bit of an ask because I mean, it just makes it a lot easier to have someone there who's like professional and ready to go at any time, but can carry on a 3-hour conversation easily, right? So
Right.
I don't know about having one every day if you're not there, but
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it works out. But hopefully Free Talk Live will have some sort of presence. We are definitely going to have a presence at ForkFest, and that is the decentralized alternative to the Porcupine Freedom Festival. It was something that came out in the year of 2017, and it is decentralized in that there's no tickets for ForkFest. You just get your RV site, your campsite, or your motel room from Rogers Campground. I suspect there's still some availability for ForkFest. I know the Porcupine Freedom Festival, the campground is sold out. Bonnie found this out over the weekend. She was trying to get a campsite for one of her organizations that she works with, and they had to get on a waiting list at this point.
Yeah, and I was like number 15.
So yeah, the campsites,
So it's not going to happen.
campsites and RV sites, and I'm sure motel rooms are all sold out on the campground.
But luckily, there are PorcFest Matrix and Telegram rooms. I suggest joining the Telegram room because if you need to DM someone, most likely they're on the Telegram side. Anyways, you can go in there and just say, hey, I need to put up a tent. This is what I have. This is how many people I have, and somebody will haggle with you about
there's people willing to
staying
share.
on their
There's people
site.
willing to rent their sites.
So I mean, we're already good. I'm just going to stay on the waiting list because if it came open, that'd be interesting
yeah, you just
too.
have to
but
be open to talking to people. I mean, if you don't have, if you want to get a ticket to the Porcupine Freedom Festival and you don't have a place to stay on the campsite, just go walk around and talk to people, or do what Bonnie did and get in the chat rooms in advance and ask for help. And usually there's somebody who'll say, yeah, I got plenty of room. Come on. Because there are technically limits to how many people are supposed to be on a campsite, but it seems like the campground doesn't really enforce those limits during
yeah, they don't seem to care
during the festivals.
I mean, the harder they come down on the Porcupine Freedom Festival, the more they push them away, and they don't like that.
Well, my people, for the record, aren't going to sleep on a thing that is too crowded or anything. They're going to sleep at the Free Talk Live one and table at the other one.
And I have to agree with Bonnie that joining the Telegram chat is the way to go. I wish that wasn't the case, but someone disconnected the Telegram chat from our Matrix server, so you can't.
Oh, I'm in a
interact
different one.
with
It's
anyone.
called like Porkfest Agora that
Okay.
has a
Nice.
Matrix bridge.
So I got Mikey on the line with us here. He is one of the regular vendors for years, not quite a decade, but most of a decade at the Porcupine Freedom Festival and also at ForkFest. You've got like a little snack tent that you do some cooking on demand as well there. And Mikey, you say you received a ban message. Someone claiming to be the organizer of the Porcupine Freedom Festival messaged you and said that you were banned from the event, but yet you have yet to actually have a meaningful conversation with anyone about this ban, what the reasons for the ban were. And so we were just talking. Are you still with us there, Mikey?
Yeah, I'm here.
We were just talking about how the Porcupine Freedom Festival was sort of forced by the marketplace to do some decentralization. I believe it was 2019 when they made this decision, or actually it was 2019 when the vendors made the decision to protest the Porcupine Freedom Festival's vendor restrictions and vendor costs by just abandoning the vendor area entirely and just setting up their own. Were you a part of that? Do you remember when that happened?
Well, actually, first I wanted to say the outro did work, but the intro did not. Just
okay,
so
thank
know.
you. I appreciate it.
But I think it was 2018 that everyone abandoned. I think what's his name? Herschel, I think, was the one who did the Where It's At thing a few rows down, and and some people moved there, and then those of us who stayed in Agora Valley, not knowing this, were hung out to dry, and there was like no foot traffic.
Right.
And so I think in 2019 is when they, the market spoke and they pulled back, and also the vendor coordinator changed over, and the guy who was running it, Sean, improved things a lot. So he made it a lot more, he didn't want to deal with all the hassle and dealing with that stuff. So he just said, I just want to know, who's where, and, write it down. That's about it. No extra charges, nothing.
Mikey, I've seen the screenshot that you allegedly received from Dennis Pratt, right? And it says very clearly, you are not welcome. Not, you are not allowed. Now look, and this is an important distinction because I'm not welcome at the Republican convention here in New Hampshire. But I'm being serious, but I'm absolutely allowed to go.
That's true.
I'm not welcome there. They don't want me there, but they have
had to
not
allow
banned
you
me.
in there,
And this message does not say you are not allowed. It just says you're not welcome.
Right, and then
But it does say that he'll refund your ticket, so I think that
well,
I mean
that's
it is
different.
just implied.
The ticket
right,
is different from the amount you pay to the campground to actually have the spot. The ticket from
He didn't say
PorcFest
ticket.
is
Sorry,
separate for that.
I didn't mean to say ticket. He said we'll work with Rogers to refund you
your deposit.
Well, maybe you don't need that kind of help. Maybe you don't want to work with them to work with Rogers. Maybe Rogers wants you to be there. Who knows?
Well, I mean, if he were willing to work with me, he could reach out to me in the first place to work with me, and head this off in the first place.
Yeah, that's strange.
Even the accusations that he made that I alluded to earlier, I actually just remembered that I submitted a hub like a month ago, April 28th or 29th, for the Jewish Libertarians thing, and he refused to post. I noticed he refused to put it on the map or the list, and then my Jewish events were not put on the schedule. My tours that I've done the past few years were originally on the schedule, and he has since removed them.
Weird.
Yeah,
so it was a whole month ago that he refused to put them on the map?
Yeah, so even though he's making these claims that something I allegedly did, which I absolutely deny, he was preventing me from interacting with PorcFest even earlier than that. So what he's claiming now is not possible.
Breaking.
Really,
Does Dennis Pratt hate Jewish people?
Oh, I don't know about that, but
this all does seem very petty and childish.
It seems like a
though.
personality conflict that maybe you got on his bad
But
side.
Mikey's like a mainstay at PorcFest. He was one of the first people I met at the Porcupine Freedom Festival. He's been there vending every single year that I've gone, and it's.
Yeah, I remember when Will Coley brought you, and I to be honest, I didn't care for you at first, but I consider you one of my closest friends now.
I appreciate that, and I'm accustomed to that. People are like, I don't know about this person, but I win them over.
And it wasn't even the way you presented. It wasn't even your, gender thing. It was you just. I think you were just really hopped up on stuff, and it just was.
Allegedly.
That was grating.
I was on a lot of
I don't
monster.
know. I don't know how to tell that stuff, but
just kidding.
Well, it's always awkward your first year into any new group. And whenever you come into whether it's a convention or it's the Porcupine Freedom Festival, you're the new guy or the new gal or whatever, and you get introduced to people or you meet some people, but it's not the same as coming back for the next year when then then it's like, oh, hey, here's people I know. I feel comfortable, and now I'm meeting more new people, and because the people that I've met last year are now introducing me to new people. So it's always awkward that first year out. I mean, I remember when I think the first time I met you, Aria, was we were dancing at the party tent or whatever during one of the raves
dance party?
that was going on. I don't know if I even met you at that time. It's just we were in the same tent together. But you weren't the most outgoing, I don't think, person at that time.
I'm pretty shy, especially around new people.
Well, Aria hates electronic music.
I don't hate it.
She was in there.
He's probably very upset. Just kidding.
So, Mikey, like I said, if it were me in this case, I would go ahead and test the boundaries of this and say.
I fully intend to. I've been offered sanctuary by numerous people, so I guess if he wants to ban half the festival, he can do so. But plenty. I mean, they would have to inspect every car basically to make sure I don't get in. And
I hope they don't bring that back.
They did that with Chris Cantwell
before.
I will also say, if a Snack Jew stand just appears at the Free Talk Live site, I wouldn't object, right?
So you're not telling people, just to clarify, you're not asking for anybody to boycott the event or anything like that?
No, and I encourage people to buy tickets because I don't like when people say, oh, I'm not going to buy a ticket because I don't support what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
This event barely makes a profit if it does. And a lot of the infrastructure, like the porta potties and the extra facilities they do, does cost money. So I do encourage people to buy tickets. And I don't want people sneaking in like that with no tickets. So and I don't want people disrupting things either because I've been accused of disrupting things. And I mean, that could be a point of view things, but, know what's a reasonable thing to do. So please buy tickets if you're going to go.
Are you going to be attending ForkFest from June 15th through 18th?
I plan to.
Okay.
I plan to be there for the weekend.
Yeah, I think I think it's going to put the park in a kind of a weird spot, right? Because you've reserved.
Wait, it's not the 15th. Sorry, isn't it the 16th, 17th, 18th?
I'll have to double check that. I thought it was
because the
15th.
19th is the first day of PorcFest, which is the Monday.
Right.
We've been saying 15th or the 18th, so I think 18th
I think
is
it's
the Thursday.
through. I think it's
Whatever you
Thursday
want it
through.
to be.
Yeah,
I just
it
didn't
is
know.
Forkfest. It's however long you want to go.
I didn't know people show up on the Thursday if it's a weekend.
Well, I mean, it used to be a 7-day event, so it's just kind of like a long weekend,
I mean,
basically.
His whole week is going to be occupied trying to locate me and all kinds of insane things. I mean, people could call in Mikey sightings everywhere, and you know, there's more important things than dealing with me. So, you know, if he just ignored me in the first place, it probably would have, you know, beyond the fact that he ignored me over the thefts and stuff. But if he stopped banning me from everything, it wouldn't have escalated to this.
Just call him and say, I just saw a yarmulke peering out through the bushes. It went away faster than I could catch him.
And I mean, you definitely haven't threatened violence or haven't threatened to assault anyone. And to me, that's threatening to violate the non-aggression principle is one of the few things worthy of being
Well, that's the
banned.
thing.
Yeah,
it's
not
like
to
the guy that
Dennis.
threatened violence is going to be on the main stage speaking.
Being
Maj
paid to
Tour-
speak.
Maj Tour is going to be speaking from the pavilion, from the official main stage, after not only threatening violence, threatening to assault anyone that has a drag queen story hour on the PorcFest, on the entire campground property, but not even apologizing or acting like he made a mistake, or he's doubled down, in fact.
Oh, but
on
Dennis
that
talked to him
statement.
privately, and privately he said he wasn't serious.
Oh, yeah.
Or I
and
didn't
he-
mean that exactly.
And then he also said he was willing to have a conversation with people at PorcFest about it. And I said, well, why should we wait? Let's have a conversation right now. Here's my, nationally syndicated radio show. We'd love to have you on to clarify what you meant by that. Since you're willing to have a
He
conversation.
doesn't like to have conversations he can't control.
No, and he turned us down, actually. I invited him on more than one occasion. Invitation's still open if he decides to change his mind.
That's both of them, too. Dennis and Maj
That's
Tour.
true. There's an invitation to Dennis as well to come on the show, and he actually sort of declined, but not really. He said that he wanted to be on a podcast.
Yeah, which is a
And-
weird thing to...
And I
It's
said,
on the
well,
internet, too.
we have fewer breaks than ever. We used to have 4 breaks an hour. We now only have 2. So if you were to come on for an hour of Free Talk Live, there's only actually 1 break to interrupt you, right? It's the bottom of the hour break. That's the only one that would interrupt. So we can get really deep into conversations like we were never able to do prior to this year. And I've pointed that out to him, I think, and he hasn't really, taken me up on the offer. I don't know why he would want to just be on a podcast beyond just the format, because there's more
Well, we could
listeners.
easily do a Freer Talk Live that
We
he
could.
could tune in and listen to it. And something tells me he still wouldn't be willing to do it.
Well, maybe I should make that offer to him at this point, because, why wouldn't you want to be on a radio show when you can reach more people? I mean,
most podcasts are only like half an hour long anyway.
It's like I said, that's a great point. And I don't think people should boycott this event. I didn't even think people should boycott the event when they banned me from the Porcupine Freedom Festival. I actually wrote an article at Free Keen about how, well, I can't go, but you should still go, because despite whatever personality conflicts there might be there's still going to be 1,000 really cool people there that, a lot of them you're going to get along with. So you should go and meet them. So I'm glad that you're also still supportive of the event. I'm glad you're going to be at Forkfest, which is happening June 15th through the 18th. And that is essentially the pre-party for the Porcupine Freedom Festival this year. It used to be after the Porcupine Freedom Festival for the last few years. You can go to forkfest.party to learn more about that event. And Mikey, was there anything else you wanted to share with us tonight?
Not really. I think that was basically the message I want to get across, and maybe Dennis will come on now because he'll have to do some damage control, because I'm sure a lot of people heard this and are going to be not too happy about it.
Thank you for the call tonight. I appreciate it. And I hope cooler heads can prevail on this, and maybe there can be some kind of,
Well,
saving
Dennis
this
has been
situation. Thanks for the call.
Buddhist Bobby Hill on social media, and I am great and holy, and we should all live in peace and love all over the place. So where is that in this particular scenario, right? It's easy to say, I'm so happy to see you people have found middle ground and walking around like Bobby Hill thinking he's the Dalai Lama, but maybe actually apply some of that. And I use that example because in one of the episodes, Bobby Hill of King of the Hill, he thought he was the Dalai Lama. And he said something, one of his friends accused another of playing only sharps. And he says, well, then you should play only flats and together it'll be harmony. And of course, that's not at all the way that music works. And it's a completely useless thing
It's
to
just
have
like a
said.
saying that he thought sounded deep.
Right. He thought it sounded wise and deep and meaningful, but it wasn't. And that's a lot of what I've seen from Dennis Pratt's sort of meditative, not meditative, his sort of messages along those lines on Twitter and social media.
Well, a lot of times people fail to reach the levels that they would like people to aspire to. The old saying is, don't ever meet your icons, right? The people, your heroes, right? Because they're only going to disappoint you.
Before we move on from the King of the Hill thing, I just want to say my favorite part of that episode is when Hank is mad at Bobby and he says, Buddhist liar.
Like, I haven't taken it personally.
My favorite part is when he walks into the bedroom and he sees Bobby sitting there going, money, and he's like, no, God dang it, no way.
Dennis has thrown around some insults online towards Bonnie and I personally, I don't take it personal. I understand that he is doing a job that I wouldn't wish on anyone. He's trying to organize.
Not an excuse. It's like, your job is stressful.
I'm not
therefore
saying it's an
you
excuse. I'm just explaining why I understand. And so I understand that somebody who's under a lot of stress can snap, right? But
it's like throughout the day, you don't have any moment of clarity and apologize for the things you're doing or stop the things you're doing or look at it objectively.
Maybe he will be able to do that and apologize to Mikey and welcome him back. I don't know. I don't know how personal this is.
I don't know if he can admit that he's wrong at this point.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if he can, save face or whatever. But I get that being in the position of organizer of the world's most popular, most attended Liberty Festival, which is what the Porcupine Freedom Festival is. For a time, it was an Acapulco. An Acapulco did have that sort of title.
This year they kind of had a weird outdoors one pavilion. I don't know. This year, an Acapulco was like a weird outdoors
they left
hidden.
The hotels.
They were in a hotel. It just looked so much like it had declined, but I've never been to one.
I thought it looked cool. I wished I could have been there for it. But anyway, what I want to point out is doing the organizing of that is stressful. I mean, there's a lot of...
Certainly, but it doesn't have to be, right? And last year was supposed to be Dennis's last year of doing it.
Okay. Not all alone.
They seem to be having a hard time finding anyone who wants to do it because, as you mentioned...
Because the job sucks.
But they don't have to do it.
That's
all they have
point.
to do is all right, these are the dates. Have a good time.
That's the point. That's what I wanted to say, was that I think that's where the Porcupine Freedom Festival still dropped the ball, even though they did the right thing and they decentralized the camping area. So they, as I was explaining earlier, the vendors, they had a protest in 2018 or 2019, and they went to their own area of the campground, and PorcFest said, oh crap, no one's in our designated vending area. This has completely failed. So fine, we'll just let it go. And they stopped reserving the entire park at that point, and they only reserved the pavilion area, which is like sort of the focus. It's the main area. They reserved that area with the campground, and then they program the official PorcFest program there, and then there's just whatever happens in the park. There's all this other stuff that happens, and the Free State Project does try to kind of keep track of it, so you can inform them that, oh, I'm going to set up this thing on this site. It's going to be our hub, and it's going to focus on cryptocurrency, or we're going to set up this other hub over here. It's going to focus on secession.
And there's a lot of this, by the way,
a lot.
For the last 2 years especially. I mean, last year there was a movie being played on a giant projector. There was a fireside hub or something like that where they were doing speeches. There were podcast
There's like
places.
The Christian hub, and there's all kinds of stuff. And so that was the right move, to decentralize that, to stop charging for the prime locations, and just let the market handle it. Let people, contact the campground and pay for their site, and just have that off the table of PorcFest entirely. But what you're saying, Arya, is they should have gone further. And they should have said, you know what, we're not even going to do any kind of official program or anything.
Well, they could provide an app, right? If they want to do that.
Which they had done in the past.
Yeah, provide a decentralized, I don't remember Eventify, what's it, Eventify?
Is this the one that you hired?
Yeah. One of them was very good about this, and there was the capacity to allow other people to add their own events to it. It took some backdoor maneuvering to make it happen, but still, with the Porcupine Freedom Festival's money, they could pay to have this sort of thing done, and then they just have this app where you can add your own events to it, and then they don't even have to manage it.
That would have been the ideal, sort of a decentralized app or something like that. Maybe it doesn't exist, but there's a bunch of programming geeks within the Free State Project. They could have rolled something up.
Eventify doesn't do that unless you make every user an administrator, and then you do still have to have someone who makes them an administrator when they signed up. That's the only real thing, right? You couldn't just create an account and start doing it. But as you mentioned, they have someone there who could make that happen. They certainly do.
So they could have done that. And
Eventbrite, is that it?
No, it was sell tickets.
It was Eventify that we used.
Yeah, so they could have just said
Firefly.
They could have just stepped back from the pavilion and said, "Look, we'll let somebody else rent the pavilion. Hey, anybody else want to rent the pavilion? You get the top dog, top place. You get to schedule whatever you want to schedule in there. You know, maybe a sponsor like Reason.com or whatever would have come in, and then it would have been the Reason Pavilion, and they would have scheduled whatever speakers
Which
they
has
want
happened in years past. I think it was my second year at the Porcupine Freedom Festival when they returned to the media room upstairs. It was the Dash Pavilion with a giant Dash banner on the side of it.
Yeah, it was still programmed by the Free State Project. It was still rented by the Free State Project. So I'm talking about where the Free State Project would have nothing to do with programming it or even renting it. Now, the argument for the Free State Project doing some level of organization would be like, okay, but who's going to bring in the extra bathrooms? That's something that they do now, and the question is, would
Rogers Campground?
Why couldn't they just do that and other little things that like an event would need without doing everything else?
Yeah, that's true, and they could have done that.
Why couldn't they just do that?
Yeah, they could do that. They could just do the
necessary. Are the porta potties really necessary?
I think
I've heard that they are. I've heard they are because
like
the water will get all used up, and I don't know.
Yeah, the bathrooms can only handle so much traffic, basically. So yeah, what you're saying, Bonnie, is that they could still kind of
do
have
the necessities,
tickets.
the bare necessities.
They could still do some of the
simple bare necessities.
The infrastructure, I guess, would be the terminology there, and then just let the market handle all the programming. Because the big controversy before Mikey getting banned this year was the Maj Tour threats, which the organizer did nothing about, and then also the fact that there's going to be these thug politicians like RFK Jr. and Vivek and
Ramaswamy
and Tulsi. And
whoa, I didn't know she's going to be there.
Yeah, she's going to be there. And then Larry Elder is going to be there as well. All these national politicians are going to be there speaking from the main stage, which, in my opinion, is a bad look. I mean, I think...
and it makes libertarians happy. And that's the part that concerns me about this. Because
libertarians happy?
I feel like it legitimizes them.
I haven't seen that many that it makes happy. Like, it obviously makes Dennis Pratt happy. But most people I have seen responding to this, even like the LP&H types that I usually disagree with, have been like, this is ridiculous. Why are you doing this? If you do this, like the only thing we're going to do is go in there to make him look bad. I don't see anybody saying like, I want to, yay, I just can't wait to hear him. I don't know.
There's
Not
more
a lot.
coming up. You can join the show here. The number is 603-283-6160. More on AI coming up.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people like passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com.
There are basically two types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. NATO has condemned as, quote, totally unacceptable the attacks by protesters in Kosovo that have left some 25 of its peacekeepers injured. Police and NATO troops clashed with Serb demonstrators in the north, where there's been unrest over the installation of ethnic Albanian mayors. Nigeria's new president, Bola Tinubu, has been sworn in. The 71-year-old takes office following a disputed election and under pressure to quickly improve the economy and security in what is Africa's most populous country. Our Nigeria correspondent, Ajek Mangut, reports.
The president did appeal to Nigerians to join hands with him to ensure that there's sort of hope and to make Nigeria better than it is currently. And of course, he has said that he's going to be more of a servant leader, but he will ensure that he consults with Nigerians. And so we're likely to see him trying to win the trust of Nigerians and to also ensure that he delivers on the promises he made during the campaigns. What sort of strategy is he going to make in terms of addressing the insecurity that Nigeria is facing? How is he going to reduce the high rate of inflation?
US President Joe Biden's congratulated Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan on his re-election. He said he was looking forward to continuing to work together as NATO allies. Although Turkey's hold-up of NATO enlargement is one of several disagreements between the two countries. President Erdogan won just over 52% of the vote in an election that the opposition criticised as being deeply unfair. Uganda's President Museveni has signed into law the controversial anti-homosexuality bill, ignoring Western condemnation and concerns from rights groups. The new law targeting the LGBTQ community prescribes harsh punishments that include the death penalty and life imprisonment. Michael Beleke reports from Uganda.
Same-sex relations are illegal in Uganda, and those caught in the act could face up to 20 years in jail. Some extreme cases like aggravated homosexuality, which includes sex with a minor or having sex while HIV positive, will attract a death penalty. The decision by President Museveni has attracted praise from Ugandan lawmakers, arguing the law will protect the sanctity of family and defend the culture and aspirations of the local people. The anti-gay law has received worldwide condemnation, with Uganda's international development partners threatening to pull donor funds from the country.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking today at Monday's swearing-in of Bola Tinubu as the new president of Nigeria. After a very close election, he secured office with just 37% of the vote. It's the first time any Nigerian leader has come to power with the backing of less than half the electorate. He takes over from President Muhammadu Buhari, who leaves inflation and deep economic uncertainty in his wake. Bob McMahon is with America's Council on Foreign Relations.
Buhari squandered ample political capital that he came to office with as someone who was really seen as being able to clear through some of Nigeria's messy politics and cronyism, and didn't. The largest economy in Africa, a population that could be the world's third largest by 2050, according to some projections. And even with its problems, it's also, there's a great deal of dynamism around Nigeria. It's just, it's governance. And we have someone who campaigned under the theme of "it's my turn," which doesn't necessarily rouse you to feel like he's going to change things. But Tinubu, who's the former governor of Lagos State, is someone who is extremely well connected. He is, by some accounts, also considered to be a very strong judge of sort of talent, and might be capable of putting together a strong, cabinet that could help power the country through some of its problems.
The election will be remembered for the powerful performance of third-party candidate Peter Obi, who will remain in the wings, hoping for another opportunity to take power. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
Our main news again. NATO has condemned as, quote, totally unacceptable the attacks by protesters in Kosovo that have left some 25 of its peacekeepers injured. Nigeria's new president, Bola Tinubu, has been sworn in. US President Joe Biden's congratulated Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan on his re-election, and Uganda's President Museveni has signed into law the controversial anti-homosexuality bill. And that's the latest feature story news. Kate Fisher reporting.
Yesterday, two groups of men shot at each other near Bagram Base, where I am. Today, the soldiers are happy about some of the men dying and sad about other men dying. Sergeant First Class Aaron Tomlin is only sad about 4 of the dead people.
It's a long, tough day here. We lost 4 good men.
No, 27 men died. 4 American soldiers and 23 Taliban soldiers. You said that 4 soldiers die and it makes you sad. But you said when Taliban soldiers die, it does not make you sad. I asked Base Commander David Hawkins to make it make sense.
The last thing we resort to is hurting anyone. But you have to understand, it's our job to keep the American people safe from our enemies. And sometimes that includes...
So if you kill your enemies at your job, it is not sad.
Well...
What if I killed my enemy Ryan at my job? It would not be sad?
No, you shouldn't do that.
But he is rude to me. He steals my yogurts. He makes fun of the way I talk.
Look, only soldiers can kill without getting in trouble.
Okay. Are you going to kill Ryan?
No.
It does not make sense.
This is the Onion News Network.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. You can join the show if you want to bring up whatever you want to discuss. You can join us at 603-283-6160. We started the show talking about the latest development in artificial intelligence, and that is that Photoshop, the world's most noteworthy and sort of acclaimed program for graphic editing, graphic design, has now integrated artificial intelligence, generative artwork technology, and it's really impressive. I have not yet had the chance to use it. I'm not a Photoshop expert by any means. I am like barely able to find my way around in that program. But this looks like it's relatively easy to kind of pick up and use, maybe just a brief tutorial.
Well, that's the beauty of AI, right? You don't have to be good at any particular thing. You just have to be able to tell AI what you want it to do.
Yeah. We can talk more about that coming up here.
And in case you thought I was being sarcastic, no, that's a wonderful thing.
Yep, I agree. It opens up the opportunity for, in this case, graphic design to people who previously had zero to little technical prowess as far as how to get this stuff done. Anyway, we can talk more about that. It's Ian, Bonnie, and Aria here in the studio tonight as we kick off the second hour. Let's go to the phone. Stephen is in Northwest Georgia. You're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead, Stephen.
Hey, so I've looked at, like, coming up to New Hampshire before, like, moving there. I've looked at, you know, coming to the festivals and seeing how things interact. But, so I'm confused now. Who runs, like, is there an organization that runs the Porcupine Freedom Festival?
Yes, that would be the Free State Project.
Okay, so the Free State Project, so the people that are publishing these YouTube videos of the 100 Reasons to Move to New Hampshire and calling themselves the most libertarian group on planet Earth, I think, at one point.
That's cringy. I didn't know they called themselves that, but sure. I mean, I think they did the 101 Reasons thing, or the 100 Reasons. I think that was them. But yes, it is the Free State Project that runs the Porcupine Freedom Festival.
So those people are now saying that some people can be enacted with violence?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
It was a strangely formatted question. You're referring to the Maj Tour controversy. Maj Tour is a self-proclaimed libertarian, although I don't think he would qualify at all.
He's a gun rights activist, right?
Yeah, even by the most expansive definition of libertarian. I mean, he's good on guns, and it seems like that's about it. He apparently supports reparations, which is not a particularly libertarian thing unless it's done voluntarily. And he's not very libertarian on a lot of things, including he doesn't understand the non-aggression principle, because he believes that it's totally fine for him to come in and physically attack someone, to, quote, assault someone if they're doing something that he doesn't agree with. In this particular case, it was reading books to children while wearing drag.
And it's completely crazy. That is a completely crazy perspective. But I posted something recently on Twitter that got like 1,400 retweets or something like that, and a lot of comments. And what I learned from the comments is that conservatives all make exactly the same talking point about this trans thing. It's that mutilating children's genital, and that's it. They don't even know the very basics of what this discussion is about, because it's not about mutilating children's genitals. That's never been the part of the conversation.
Well, they also like to yell grooming.
But they and when you argue with them, that's what they call you. That's their go-to response for everything, which completely makes it meaningless. But it's the same thing that he's doing here with it. We saw Conan doing here back on when he was still on the show. They don't even know what a drag queen is.
Exactly. He tried to make it worse than it is in later comments so that way he could justify his stance. He said, listen, if you're reading sexual material to children, then I'm going to assault you because I'm protecting the children. But for one thing, it's still a non-aggression principle violation because of the fact that if a parent wants to consent to their kids taking a sexual education class from a drag queen, that's none of your business. Even if they're like 5, it's none of your business. Some parents just talk openly about sex. When I was a kid, my parents did not. But some of my friends' parents would just talk about sex right in front of us and stuff, and like they knew what periods were. And I was just like completely shocked by that. But they weren't groomers. They just had different philosophies on that stuff than my parents.
They have different values on when it's okay to talk to their kids about something that every human being, for the most part, is interested in learning at some point in their lives.
And I know it makes conservatives very, very upset to think about, their children ultimately having sex or whatever. The subject entirely upsets them. But look, I need everyone out there to understand that when you teach people proper sex education, teen pregnancy rates go down, STD rates go down, sexual assault rates go down. There is no downside for a robust sex education.
And there's plenty of studies about that and numbers on that, but the conservatives will just tell you, or some libertarians will just tell you, no, Thomas Sowell wrote a book in 1999 saying that STD rates went up when sexual education happened, so therefore it's bad.
No, you just have to look at Mississippi. Mississippi's the top in gonorrhea, teen pregnancies, HIV, syphilis, and a bunch of other things like that, teen pregnancy. And it's because Mississippi has no sex education. I know this from firsthand. There's no sex education there. And if it ever is brought up, it's abstinence only sex education, which isn't sex education at all, by the way. It's saying, well, we don't have to teach you to stop, drop, and roll if you're on fire. Just don't catch on fire.
Yep.
Right? Instead, teach them to stop, drop, and roll.
I've never seen if you're pregnant, you need to get tested for gonorrhea sign just on the side of the road, except in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Wow. Doesn't seem to be necessary in other places.
That's the problem with their sex education as well. Their abstinence only thing. When they do talk about sex, all they're interested in doing is fear-mongering around the subject. Oh, if you even look at someone's genitals, you need to go get tested for HIV. You're going to die at the age of 22 because now you have AIDS. That's all they're interested in doing, and it's bad for people. There's a reason that Mississippi is in the state that it's in, with its high teen pregnancy rates and its high rates of HIV and syphilis and gonorrhea and everything else negative that's attached to sexuality, when states that have robust sex educations don't have those problems. I don't care what Thomas Sowell said in his book.
In 1995.
The data don't lie.
And what subject on this planet, in what subject is knowledge ever a bad thing? With gun safety? Education on gun safety and how to handle a gun is the answer.
That's a really good point.
Education on how to do it safely and to know what you're dealing with is the answer.
That's a great point. Stephen, I think we went a little far afield. Did you get an explanation as to what was going on there? Sorry, say again?
My question is, who's organizing the various events? And then, I guess.
Well, hold on. Before you get to the second part, as we tried to explain in the last hour, the Free State Project has a certain section of the campground. So they have what's called the pavilion, and then there's some tents that they set up. They rent thousands of dollars worth of big tents, right? So they have some big tents on the sort of grassy area outside the pavilion. Those are also... They belong to the Free State Project, so the Free State Project programs whatever the speakers are in there. They decide who speaks when they speak. But the rest of the campground, which is really where most of it goes on, and by the way, you're breathing pretty heavy into that phone, Stephen. the rest of the campground is all done by the attendees. So there's all kinds of different things that are going on all across the campground at any given moment, and different individuals or organizations are responsible for those particular schedules.
Okay, so does anyone have any idea where the money's going?
The money that you would pay for the ticket for the Porcupine Freedom Festival? Well, they have to pay to rent the tents, and they have to pay to rent the porta potties, and they have to pay to rent the pavilion.
The Free State Project does.
The Free State Project. And some of the speakers, they pay for their airfare or maybe a small speaker's fee or something like that. So that's where the money goes. The organizers generally, as I understand it, are volunteer. They don't get paid for doing the job.
Yeah, it's not of any interest to me where the money goes. I mean, I pay for my ticket. I don't care what they do with it. That's not my business at all.
Yeah, it's not an unreasonable ticket cost. I think it's like what, $70 pre-purchase, and then it goes up to $100 or something like that.
Yeah,
so
they're pretty cheap.
I mean, when you break it down over 7 days, you're talking about like $10 to $15 a day for the best festival in the world for liberty.
I mean, once I bet my ticket, it's their money, so they can. If they want to buy a bunch of crack with it, I don't care. That's not my business.
Okay. Do any of these organizations have like an official relationship with LP New Hampshire?
The Free State Project is not a political organization.
Yeah. When you say do any of these organizations, again, the campground has probably dozens and dozens of different organizations that are present that are doing. I know, Bonnie, you've got a group that you're with, Liberty Policy Alliance.
Yeah.
They're going to be there. They're going to have their own
They're going to be tabling and selling merchandise and stuff like that, and telling you about what their plans are for their organization.
Free Talk Live's going to have a tent there.
LPNH will certainly have a tent there.
You can also donate at give.lpa.link.
Yeah, so none of these people necessarily have anything to do with one another, but they may or may not. But I think your answer is good, at least as far as the Free State Project, Aria, is they're, 501c3, so they can't actually advocate for candidates or taking positions on issues, so therefore they don't have any official relationship, no. But for instance, some of the Free Staters, or some of the members of the Free State Project's board, like Jeremy Kauffman, he ran as a candidate for the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire last year.
He's not on board anymore. He was when he ran, though.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's crossover, but that's not the same thing as an official relationship.
And it's all the more reason that one should not bow to the government and request their permission to be an organization in the first place. You shouldn't seek 501c3 status.
I agree. I tend to agree with that, yeah. Stephen, anything else? Any other questions? Are we going to see you up there?
Oh, yeah, I wanted to ask that, too.
No, I mean, unfortunately, I'm kind of on probation, but I'm not. And, like, the amount of restriction that they can give me is really slim, but they've made it pretty clear that they don't want... They've made it pretty clear that with the upcoming election, they're looking for a reason to put me away later on. And so... unmarried Stephen would be up there and like sending his probation officer video, but married Stephen really likes to sleep next to his wife now.
I gotcha. I understand, Stephen. Thank you for the call tonight. I appreciate hearing from you. For those that want to learn more, they can go to porcfest.com, porcfest.com, and also the Fork Fest, which is happening the 4 days before the Porcupine Freedom Festival.
Neither of these are really like cooking festivals, by the way. I realized that Pork Fest and Fork Fest, they sort of
I used to think that that's what you guys were talking about when I first started listening to the show.
To be fair, though, the Porcupine Freedom Festival has a fair number of vendors who are quite good at cooking. So, like, there's
Mikey was one of them.
True.
Doesn't he make pancakes? That's why I've always heard. But I don't
he
think
made
I ever
orange
tried
chicken
it.
for me one year.
Oh.
But yeah, I think he does pancakes and some breakfast stuff as well. But Jay Noon has been there for years, our Thursday night co-host, doing cooking up fresh meat from Bardo Farm, which is a farm run partially by Free Staters, I believe, founded by Free Staters.
Meat's always so good because it's raised by Jay and his children. It's just, you can actually taste the difference in
Well, not all
bacon.
the meat that he's cooking is raised by him.
Oh,
some of it's coming from Bardo Farm.
Well, the ones that come from him and the ones that come from Bardo Farm are raised by people who love the animals and take really good care of them and feed them good stuff. And you can actually taste a difference.
Yeah, they're not shoving their chickens into little cages where they can't walk or any of that other inhumane, evil crap.
Yeah, you get some really great, homemade food there and handcrafted items and all kinds of stuff. There's all kinds of people that are vending things and, historically.
And running events.
Yep, there are lots of events. I haven't even had a chance to look at what's going on.
One thing I'm dreading, though, it was really kind of an issue last year, and I realize I may be in the minority on this, but the number of kids on some kind of hustle running around trying to sell you random crap is excessive.
I'm fine with telling kids, nope.
It was so excessive last year. You couldn't take 10 steps without someone to go, hey, do you want to buy my program or whatever that you can get for free anywhere?
Right.
It's like, I admire the entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah.
Within reason.
I'm not mean to the little kids, but I did tell one year, or last year, the one day that I went, I just told them, I don't have any money with me. And then they go away.
I always start out very kind, very generous. Sure, I'll buy your weird little painting for $5 or whatever.
Well, that's your problem then.
But after,
they know you're a good mark.
No, they don't ever come back. It's different kids because there's 3,000 people at this place. But then the next day, there's going to be some kid here with a bottle of water. You can see them going around asking everyone, do you want to buy a bottle of water for $1 while you're drinking out of your bottle of water? It's like, no, go away. And it's just
$1 for a bottle of water isn't bad.
I don't think that would be.
I think people want to teach their kids to be entrepreneurs and stuff there.
I think that's great.
It's kind of it's a good thing.
It is, but again,
and they got to be
excessive.
They got to be used to being told no, So somebody's got to tell them no.
Yeah.
And if I was really interested in something they had, then I would buy it from a little kid. It's not anything wrong with the little kids.
It probably works for them, right? I mean, people are lazy. They don't want to get up and go walk to buy a bottle of water, so pay the kid $1, and there it is, right there in your hand. I get it.
But most people bring their own bottle of water, and that's just one example. There's countless things that they're trying to sell, and it's good and it's helpful, but it's a bit beyond the scope of being helpful at this point.
What are you going to do?
Right, I'm just saying.
Selling a program is a little weird. I don't remember what the little kid was trying to sell me. They're petting coconut, and they're like, oh, do you want to buy blah, blah, blah?
The number here, if you want to join the show, 603-283-6160. Now, at ForkFest, the last few years, as I understand it, they've been pretty desolate as far as food options are concerned, so you got to be more
prepared. That's because
ForkFest
was after the Porcupine Freedom Festival, so people had already packed up and stuff. This year, that's unlikely to be an issue, but
still, the vendors may or may not show up early.
Right,
so,
and they may not have unpacked and set up yet.
Yeah, so I would say if you're going to go to ForkFest, just be more prepared to fend for yourself. Whereas if you're at the Porcupine Freedom Festival, you can just come with some crypto, come with some gold backs or some cash, and you're good to go. You don't ever have to leave the campsite. Although there are some places in the town that you can go eat at.
Yeah, we usually do it once or twice a year.
Yep. Let's see. So we were talking about Photoshop and the new generative fill that they have, this new feature that basically just makes editing photos so easy. You can just delete things simply by clicking on them in the photo, it seems like. You can just change the thing. So there was a demo that one guy gave where it was an image of some guy with his back to the camera, sort of far away from the camera, standing in front of an amazing view of some mountains and a lake, right?
Okay.
And you just clicked on the dude. The Photoshop automatically detected the subject, which is the guy in the photograph. And then you could just delete the guy, which he did. Or
and it just generates what it would imagine would be behind him.
Correct.
It's not just like a
fills
hole.
It in. Yeah, it just fills it right in. You couldn't tell he was ever there. Or you could tell it to change what's in the subject. So you could say, he said, put a woman in a red dress here. Okay, now there's a woman in a red dress instead of a guy in a hiking outfit or whatever it was.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I love it. But man, that's crazy. I want this technology to be more widely available. Photoshop, give this to me for free.
I know. Watching the videos Eamon was showing last night, I was like, this looks so fun, but there's no way I'm going to buy Photoshop for this. It would be such a waste of time for me.
Aria at freetalklive.com, you can send me your Photoshop key, Photoshop, by the way, and I will promote Photoshop one time.
So those are, I just telling you what they can do with it's hard to really describe.
It
the
is
power
amazing,
of this.
though. I just very quickly went to Twitter, and I think I looked up Photoshop AI or something like that you told me to look at.
Search
and
for that,
it's absolutely incredible what these people can do.
One thing is, you don't even have to with Photoshop before, if you wanted to fill something, you'd have to really carefully with your mouse, which is way harder than a tablet, trace something. With this, you just have to get the general area of the sky in the picture of the mountains, and just put sunset instead of midday. So I want a sunset sky instead of midday, and it's just boom,
replaced
it
instantly.
replaces it. It doesn't need you to trace the thing perfectly.
And it gives you 3 different options, too. So it doesn't just give you one replacement. You say, oh, replace this sky with a completely blue sky with a sun in it or whatever, and it'll do one version, but then you can click on a thing and you get out a second option and a third option.
Oh, like
and,
Midjourney does.
Yeah, and then, of course, like, you know, if you don't like any of those 3, you just hit the button again, and it'll give you 3 more, and then hit the button again, or start typing words, and you can have it do things. You can have it add things into photos as well. So in the Adobe demo, they show an image of a bicyclist on a cracked road, and they show the Photoshop guy just circling the cracks in the road and deleting them, and then just adding circling part of the road and then typing yellow lines, and then yellow lines appeared on the road that weren't there before.
But they look like traffic. So when he said the words yellow lines...
I don't know if it was exactly yellow lines, but maybe like yellow lines on a road or something like that. But boom, there they were, as though they'd been there the whole time. And then he wanted to make the photograph wider, so he increased the canvas, and then he hit generate, and then it just made it look like the photo was wider. You could see more of the mountains in the background, and you know, they never existed. They're not actually there per se, but they certainly don't look like that in real life. But you don't know. And that's the whole point of this, is like, you're never going to know if what you're looking at online. I mean, even before this, you still didn't really know, because somebody with the skills, with the Photoshop skills, could do a pretty good job, and you wouldn't ever know it.
Yeah, but those skills were rare.
Right.
So the odds that the photograph that you're looking at came from one of those people was very low.
Yes. Now any dummy who can point and click is going to be able to create very persuasive looking graphics and edit photos that, you know, make it look real.
It can make it look like you were anywhere. If you wanna, you won't be able to know who was and wasn't on Epstein's island now, because you can just take a picture of anyone, Aria DiMezzo.
Sure, you can put your grandma on Epstein's island.
Put them in Epstein's island and be like, this is proof she was there. Obviously, there's people that can figure out things that are fake.
Photographic proof is over.
Yeah.
Okay, at this point. It's over.
Because the thing is, it can completely generate, like, if you wanted to just say Aria went to like some other country and you were lying, and you just take Aria and then post a picture of her with just tell it, all right, make a background of like Russian temples or whatever.
She is in Iran.
Yeah, whatever.
You know,
I don't know.
violating
I said temples.
sanctions.
They have a free trial of this version of Photoshop, by the way.
No kidding.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
I'm looking at it now to try to find out exactly how much it costs, because I got to think about it. If they do have a subscription thing, then maybe we're talking like $15 a month or something.
If that's all it is, I doubt it, though.
Right.
This is pro level software.
Where it could actually be worth it, right?
It's probably dozens or $100 a month.
I'm looking at $20.99 a month is what it says. 7-day free trial. And then
that's like in the range of
$20.99
Midjourney, because Midjourney you could spend $10 a month or $20 or $30 a month. So anyway,
yeah, I think $20 a month. I think I may be inclined to mess around with this.
We'll come back to it here because there's an interesting article at The Verge titled "I Turned My Vacation Photos into Nightmares with Photoshop's New Generative AI Tool." It's kind of a fun story. But first, let's talk to Tim in Florida. Tim, you're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead.
Hey, how's it going?
What's on your mind?
For anyone listening on the radio, Ian's got a really cool shirt on. It's blue. It's got a picture of kind of shaped like a heart of virus. And it says, fear is the real virus.
Yep, the real virus is fear. It's actually a shirt that I made on one of those design a shirt sites. I think it's Custom Ink, if I recall correctly. If you were to go to freekeen.com and search for the real virus is fear in the search bar, you will find the article which has a link to the exact design. I don't get any money if you buy it. I don't care. But if you want to use this exact design, you don't have to do any of the work. So just search for that at freekeen.com. Tim, you probably were calling for a reason. Hang on. We'll continue with whatever that was going to be. You can share your thoughts as well on the latest AI amazing stuff that's going on. It's Free Talk Live.
Are you a sneezer? If you're not, can you get close to one? I don't literally mean someone sneezing. Sneezer, as defined by marketing guru Seth Godin, is an opinion leader. When a sneezer mentions something, other people catch what Godin calls the idea virus. Seth Godin says some people are more likely to tell their friends about a great new idea. So identifying and courting sneezers is a key success factor for idea merchants. His book, Unleashing the Idea Virus, is the most downloaded ebook in history, and you can download the whole book free. That's how he's making his idea contagious. Click tips, tricks, and other stuff to help you cut through the clutter at www.survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. NATO has condemned as, quote, totally unacceptable the attacks by protesters in Kosovo that have left some 25 of its peacekeepers injured. Police and NATO troops clashed with Serb demonstrators in the north, where there's been unrest over the installation of ethnic Albanian mayors. Nigeria's new president, Bola Tinubu, has been sworn in. The 71-year-old takes office following a disputed election and under pressure to quickly improve the economy and security in what is Africa's most populous country. Our Nigeria correspondent, Ajek Mangut, reports.
The president did appeal to Nigerians to join hands with him to ensure that there's sort of hope and to make Nigeria better than it is currently. And of course, he has said that he's going to be more of a servant leader, but he will ensure that he consults with Nigerians. And so we're likely to see him trying to win the trust of Nigerians and to also ensure that he delivers on the promises he made during the campaigns. What sort of strategy is he going to make in terms of addressing the insecurity that Nigeria is facing? How is he going to reduce the high rate of inflation?
US President Joe Biden's congratulated Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan on his re-election. He said he was looking forward to continuing to work together as NATO allies. Although Turkey's hold-up of NATO enlargement is one of several disagreements between the two countries. President Erdogan won just over 52% of the vote in an election that the opposition criticised as being deeply unfair. Uganda's President Museveni has signed into law the controversial anti-homosexuality bill, ignoring Western condemnation and concerns from rights groups. The new law targeting the LGBTQ community prescribes harsh punishments that include the death penalty and life imprisonment. Michael Beleke reports from Uganda.
Same-sex relations are illegal in Uganda, and those caught in the act could face up to 20 years in jail. Some extreme cases like aggravated homosexuality, which includes sex with a minor or having sex while HIV positive, will attract a death penalty. The decision by President Museveni has attracted praise from Ugandan lawmakers, arguing the law will protect the sanctity of family and defend the culture and aspirations of the local people. The anti-gay law has received worldwide condemnation, with Uganda's international development partners threatening to pull donor funds from the country. Michael Baleke reporting from Kampala.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSA.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live, and you can join the show, bring up whatever you want to discuss. The number here is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. You can join us online. Just head over to freetalklive.com and enjoy the various features that we have waiting for you there. Once again, that is freetalklive.com. Also, coming up later this year, our very own Mark Edge is going to be at an event in Prague, and you can join him there. It's going to be, I believe, he corrected me. Apparently, this is going to be the 4th year that they've done this Free Cities Project Conference. It's called Liberty in Our Lifetime, and it's going to focus on these, what are purported to be self-governing territories that say they will uphold individual rights and freedoms. Now, whether they will or not, I think remains to be seen, but there's a lot of these things are still in development, so some of the projects are going to be represented there, including some in U.S., Honduras, Germany, and Norway. They're going to share updates on their progress and explain why you should consider moving to or doing business in a free city. Mark spoke at last year's conference, and he will be speaking at this year's. You can get your 10% discount by using code FTL over at libertyinourlifetime.org. The conference is happening in Prague October 14th and 15th. That is, once again, libertyinourlifetime.org, code FTL, to save 10%. We bring Tim back on the line in Florida. Tim, what's on your mind tonight?
Hey, this isn't exactly what I called about, but I was listening to the news bump on the ad break, and this Uganda thing. Isn't it interesting the way that...
What was the Uganda thing? I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
Some new law that was passed, basically the death penalty for everything from homosexuality to transsexualism to sex with a minor. And
yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Uganda has historically been very unfriendly to gay people, and so
this is the place with the politician who stood there at like some council meeting and was like, "They eat the poo-poo" or whatever. God. This is that guy. I mean, this is that country. So,
but isn't it interesting how they just kind of wrap it all together like it's all the same thing?
Yeah, well, that's what somebody who doesn't want to think would do. And there's certainly plenty of conservatives in this country who I'm sure are cheering on Uganda in this case. They love it when Putin does the same kind of crap in Russia, and they love seeing tyranny in their name all around the world. Like when that the dictator in El Salvador was rounding up thousands of people with no trial, with nothing beyond just a simple accusation that, oh, these people are involved in gang activities, so we're just going to put them away in this gang prison over here for the rest of their lives. And the conservatives, some of the conservatives in the U.S. were like, yeah, that's how it should be done.
We need that kind of leadership in our country.
Yeah, it's sad how rare empathy has become. Like I mentioned the thing I posted on Twitter recently that got a lot of comments, and one of the comment threads is like, well, why do you care about kids so much? Like, because I was a kid once, right? Mm-hmm. And I know how much that sucks to be a trans kid or a gay kid or whatever and not being allowed to express that because your parents are homophobic or transphobic or whatever. And I have this thing called empathy that causes me to want to see less suffering in the world. Whereas conservatives or these bigots of whatever flavor, they don't seem to just lack empathy. They're outright malicious. They don't want to see less suffering. They want to see more suffering.
Yeah, there's a specific, I don't want to say branch, they don't have a name, but there's a clear to me division among libertarians in the ones that just want to make things okay for themselves and the ones who actually want to change things in the world, at least help people see what's going on so that they can change their own lives. It's something I want to go and change people's lives forcefully. Like if people don't want freedom, give them freedom, and that's always what their comeback is. It's like, well, most people don't want freedom. I'm not trying to force them to be free. That doesn't make any sense. You just educate people. You show them what's going on. Oh, did you know that only like 6 media companies run all the media, and they're just giving you propaganda to listen to, and they want you to think a certain way. Things like that. People are capable of realizing those things if they're taught enough. And then there's another faction of libertarians who are like, I don't care. I just want to go out into the woods. I just want to do me and be left alone. And there's nothing wrong with that, but not caring about human beings, I think, is a psychological problem.
Yeah. It's psychopathy, isn't it? And I'm not saying that the people who want to be left alone out there in the woods are necessarily psychopaths, right? But
it's psychopaths have no empathy. And not caring is a little different from having no empathy, but not much different.
Well, I definitely want to be clear that I don't think those types of libertarians are psychopaths.
Yeah.
But I would agree that we should ideally be motivated by a desire to help other people and to make the world a better place for everyone.
Just looking at the AP report here on this Uganda situation, it points out here that LGBTQ rights campaigners say this new legislation, which specifies I guess some new so-called crimes, including, quote, attempted aggravated homosexuality.
Good Lord, what is that? I have to know.
Attempted.
It's when the White House changes the colors rainbow on it.
No, in this case, they say it's a death penalty for aggravated homosexuality, which is defined as cases of sexual relations involving people infected with HIV, as well as with minors or other categories of vulnerable people. So that gets you a death penalty. Whereas attempted aggravated homosexuality, which I guess would be attempting to do that but not actually doing it, would be an imprisonment of up to 14 years. The campaigners for LGBTQ say the legislation's unnecessary in a country where homosexuality has long been illegal. So it's already, that's what we'd heard previously, been illegal under a colonial-era law that criminalizes sexual activity, quote, against the order of nature, unquote. The punishment for that offense is life imprisonment. So I'm not sure why they needed to add anything here about 14 years or whatever. I mean, that sounds like it might be a liberalization in that particular case.
I think it's the death penalty part that makes it new. I think that's the newsworthy thing.
I was making a joke, though, because the Federalist.com came out with an article that said Pride Month is a cynical exercise in state-enforced homosexuality.
Who did this?
The Federalist.
Okay. They're kind of right-wing, aren't they?
Clearly.
I think so. Yeah.
That sounds kind of right-wing, but I just think it's funny. It's like Pride Month is state-enforced homosexuality because they turned the White House rainbow for a day or whatever.
It's also crazy how many people think that corporations like adding rainbow flags to their logos or whatever for the month of June is somehow like a symbol of success for gay rights or LGBTQ people or whatever. It's so obvious.
Pandering.
Go ahead, Tim.
Oh, yeah, well, I almost segued into something you just mentioned about the flag, but before I lose my topic here, because I know the time is probably short, so I've been listening to this podcast, and I was wondering if you'd heard of it. It's on a website called The Last American Vagabond, and this guy, his name's Ryan Christian, and he does the daily wrap-up.
No, never heard of it. Why?
Really good. I mean, he really goes into a lot of research. He has like 3-4 hour shows sometimes without any commercials at all. And basically he goes into a lot of things about Ukraine and COVID and the injections and like really detailed stuff.
Is he an actual vagabond?
I don't know. I guess.
Is that like a homeless person?
Yeah, it's
that
a
travels?
homeless person, basically. A nomad.
I don't know. It's actually, if you've heard of Whitney Webb, she's on the same website.
Nope, I have not.
I'm surprised. Yeah, they definitely Venn diagram right into the whole libertarian/anarchist scene.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of libertarian podcasts, and I certainly have not heard of them all. And, some of them will make it for 4 months, and then they'll quit, and then others will go for years. So I wish them the best of luck. Tim, thanks for the call tonight, man. I appreciate it. I just can't keep track of them all.
No, the only podcast I listen to is called Data Over Dogma, and I would highly recommend it for anyone out there who likes like religious crap and religious history and stuff, because it's really good. It's produced by an atheist and a Mormon.
Oh,
if I remember, yes, he's a Mormon, but he's got a PhD in biblical history and stuff. He's got a TikTok channel. He makes really great stuff. His name is Dan McClellan. I don't remember the atheist name, but they approach the subject in a critical kind of way, taking in the historical context and modern context and stuff. And it's really fascinating. That's the only podcast I listen to, though, because I can only imagine what happens when I know what happens when you give libertarians the opportunity to talk, right? Every libertarian out there has the potential to talk for an hour and a half every week as starting their own podcast.
Right.
So, yeah, they've got to be not even a dime a dozen, a penny a dozen. Or a penny for $1,200.
Let's go to the phones here. We got Greg in New York. You're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead, Greg.
Hey. I want to second everything that was just said, and I'm applying it to the online world. People need to educate themselves. Applying the understanding that we need to educate people. We can't force them to things, but people need to understand that if they don't have software that they can deploy themselves or for their communities, that they're going to live in a world that's dominated by Meta, it used to be called Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Microsoft, and all the other, they're the analog for me of the state online. It's just very convenient to live in a walled garden, have all your friends in that walled garden, and hey, anywhere you go, you don't have to log in. It's right there all your friends might be there. And
well, we've seen what's happening as a result of that is these people stay in the walled garden. They stay on Facebook. They barely ever leave it. They stay on Twitter. Twitter doesn't want you to leave Twitter. If you put links in, we learned when Elon Musk open sourced the Twitter algorithm that if you put a link into a site that's off Twitter that isn't a news site, that you will be
downranked.
Yeah, you'll be downranked basically. You won't.
I thought they had undid that. Did they not?
I hadn't heard about that.
Okay.
They released the code so people who know how to code could go and figure out, oh, this helps you, this hurts you. Putting in links to things that weren't Twitter or official news sites actually hurt your post. Putting in a photo helped your post. Getting likes on your post actually helped more than comments, which seemed counterintuitive, but that's what it was. You get like a certain bonus, right? So if these certain things happen.
I agree with Greg that we shouldn't be forcing people into our way of things, but I think if people have knowledge,
work anyway.
Knowledge doesn't belong to anyone, and if you have knowledge, I think you somewhat have a duty to spread it. And if you have knowledge like of what things are going to cause more freedom and what things are going to cause our entire planet to be in more control until we turn into hell on earth, I think you have a duty to spread that.
You absolutely should do that, and you definitely can improve liberty. But the thing is, and this is my pet issue, but if you apply the same reasoning that libertarians apply to the state, then you will realize that you need to exit the system and have your own software. The problem is that these corporations will never give you the software. You'll have to make it yourself. You'll have to join with like-minded individuals, just like the Free State Project, for example, and create your own thing.
Well, now, to be fair, I believe, Aria, you had some show prep tonight that actually Meta is apparently open sourcing whatever their AI project is.
That's correct. And I was going to bring up that counterpoint as well.
Yeah, which is an unusual thing to see out of a big tech company, and maybe we don't know all the details.
Maybe that's just how much they want people plugged into the VR world.
Well, apparently their VR efforts have gone nowhere.
Oh.
What's that, Greg?
First, let's be real. First of all, Meta had it leaked. It was going to work with universities. Remember I told you all about the Bloom model? That was university model that was available last year, open source. And Meta created Llama. And Llama was also supposed to be just for researchers, but then it was leaked.
Right.
And that's how we got this explosion of open source. So now, of course, Mark Zuckerberg comes out and says, well, we're not going to charge because we're not an infrastructure company. We're a social media company, so we're just going to give it away. And they claim the mantle of the OpenAI from the other company that was called OpenAI, but of course the profit motive got, corrupts everybody in this case.
So you're saying
I don't care what their motive is for doing the right thing as long as they do the right thing.
But you're saying the only reason they're opening up their source is because somebody leaked it in the first place, so now they're just like, all right, well,
they
here
could
you
just
go.
they could just release a new version that
was closed.
that wouldn't be leaked,
True.
right?
I mean, it's great PR, but this is the same company that spied on your audio, on your video, used your camera when you weren't looking, and every other way that they could possibly vacuum up your data.
Oh, yeah, they're terrible.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm not exactly thanks for opening sourcing the weights that were leaked.
So,
And
Greg,
now-
you've been following the AI situation pretty closely. What are some of the more exciting developments in recent weeks that you've seen?
Well, to me, all the exciting developments are in the open source AI. I went to an open source meetup. I've actually just come back from the Government Blockchain Association. It was happening in Washington, D.C. I do that every year. They use our apps, by the way. They use the Cubix app for the conference.
Oh, cool.
So what would I say? Well, all the open source stuff, I love the open source AI community. I think that they are, obviously, Google said that they don't have any moats, that the open source community will catch up and, eventually give it to everybody. And I called in before. I said the one industry that I think may be too much to give to everybody is like giving everyone online bombs, and that is AI. But, you can't stop it. So this is what's
it's
happening.
coming. It's coming fast. There's no doubt about it. Anything else you want to share, Greg?
I just wanted to say there's very few alternatives to the profit motive-driven big tech monopoly with their surveillance capitalism. I mean, this is a real thing. You look on Wikipedia, they have an entire article for it. surveillance capitalism to extract rent and extract data from all sides of the market for the shareholders.
What monopoly?
What?
What monopoly are you referring to? You said a big tech monopoly. You literally used the word monopoly.
Okay,
I'm just trying to figure out.
Sorry.
Okay.
I should say oligopoly. Yes.
Because that's an important distinction, I think.
An oligopoly being a group of elites instead of just one, which is a monopoly, right?
Right. Maybe I said monopolies, but what I really meant is that they form an oligopoly. So, for example, not only do they form an oligopoly, but there's one person at the top. So you cannot vote out Mark Zuckerberg. The shareholders tried many times, but he has the class of shares where it's impossible.
Wow.
Elon Musk simply took the company private with sovereign wealth funds of governments like the Saudi government and others, and bought the company. So,
by the way, there was an article recently saying that since Elon Musk has taken over Twitter, they've of course been continuing to work with the governments as far as giving them over information about Twitter users.
And he was just like, "What do you want me to do?"
Right. Elon actually responded to the article by saying, "Well, yeah, but are you going to list any times when we weren't forced to?" And certainly, I'm sure the government has put a gun to their head, figuratively, and I suspect they have to do what they have to do. So I think his point is that they're only giving over information they're being forced to give information over, but who knows what the truth is.
And that's the other thing, is that because they're so centralized, we've had the German government threaten to pull Telegram from the store. We have the Turkish government who's saying, ban Twitter if you interfere with this and that. So if you have one app in the stores, right, or one central point of failure for everything, then yeah, they're going to work with the governments. I mean, look at the Twitter files. Whereas WordPress doesn't work. Like if you install WordPress, which you have on your site, or if you use matrix.org, or indeed Cubix or something like that, it's decentralized. Linux is decentralized. So there's no concept of Linus Torvalds selling out and working with the government to compromise everyone's Linux or something.
I agree with you, Greg, and I certainly it's a fairly common theme on this show, especially on Friday nights, is decentralized is the way to go. Open source is the way to go. Big tech is just going to get bigger. They're going to keep getting in bed with governments and keep ensconcing themselves in so many different parts of our lives if we let them. Thank you for the call tonight, Greg. I appreciate hearing from you. Let's go to Ricky in Pennsylvania. You're on Free Talk Live. Ricky.
Thank you there, Brother Ian, Sister Bonnie, Sister how are you?
What's on your mind tonight?
Well, I got a quick question, and I got a reason for this. Did you, because I've been missing in action on and off, did you announce me as an amplifier?
If you've joined the AMP program, I must have missed that, so no.
Well, you know what? If you did or didn't, it's unimportant, because Ricky from the Commonwealth doesn't actually need that. I just wanted to talk about why I became an amplifier, if I could.
Okay, go right ahead. How did you join, by the way?
Huh?
How did you join?
I had someone fill it out for me. I just answered everything.
Oh, okay. Was this Patreon or through?
Yes, it was. On the 21st, it went through.
Okay.
Okay, then almost certainly we have not mentioned you yet. The list of patrons that we have, it's like 3 pages long, and it seems like it's probably going to take 2 or 3 months to get through the current list.
But to be fair, Aria, I actually check over every. Hold on, Ricky. I check over every week whenever there's new signups. I get an email.
Right, but to get to this one, we still have to go through all of the ones in front of it.
Sure, but all I'm saying is I don't even recall seeing the sign up.
Okay.
So it's not. He's not on the list because I don't think he's. Oh yeah, there it is. How did I miss that? That's crazy.
And I'll be doubling that in the future, and the amount's not important.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
now, that being said, I want to talk about why I became an amplifier, if I could, Brother Reed.
All right, Ricky, go ahead.
All right. Well, I mean, I'm new to a lot of listeners, but I disappeared 5 years ago. But before that, I did call for several years, and I love this show, and I always did. And since I came back, it took a little while, but I've grown to know all of the hosts and co-hosts. and learn to love them just as much as you, Brother Ian. And I love this show. There's nothing like Free Talk Live.
Thank you, Ricky. I appreciate that.
Never be again.
I do want to clarify something. I did process this sign up. It's just the email uses your last name. It doesn't say Ricky from the Commonwealth, so that's why I had no idea that this was you. But then when I just went into Patreon, it shows Ricky from the Commonwealth. So I don't know if that's something you changed later on or whatever. But
right, I put that as my screen name because I didn't want my last name known.
Yep. Okay. Thank you for that.
But anyways, to finish up, there's nothing like this show, and I believe in. I am a Confederate Democrat. I'm not a libertarian, but sometimes I sound like one. And I try to bring interesting things to the show, and I love what the hosts bring to the show. And I love the exchanging of ideas, of other people calling and things like that, and discussions. I mean, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I'd always hoped when we started doing Free Talk Live 20 years ago, at this point, I'd always hoped that libertarianism would be something that took off, right? Like that, because I had that belief that, everybody's a libertarian, or there's a lot of libertarians out there. They just don't know it yet. We just got to turn them on to it. And I had thought that maybe we would be competing with other libertarian talk shows at some point in the future. And, well, it's been 2 decades now.
It's not that can't happen, Ian. It's that it gets co-opted by these people who are like, libertarians getting a little too big. We got to put out this man. His name is going to be Maj Toure, and he's going to call himself a libertarian, and then we're going to confuse everyone, and everybody's going to think libertarian means people who hate trans people, or libertarian means people who don't want to get the vaccine, and every other way. They're literally George W. Bush.
Well, whatever the reason, Bonnie, it didn't happen. There's not even a second show.
There's a hardcore opposition being worked against us, unlike anything else on the planet.
No doubt about it. My point is, it didn't take off. Maybe it will someday, but it hasn't happened yet.
But you know what, Brother Ian? If I may say so, that's kind of okay, because if I may say so to Sister Bonnie, especially if you look at me throughout the years. No, I'm not a libertarian, but you know what? I don't claim to be, but in a lot of ways, sometimes I really sound like one sometimes. I mean, when it comes to whether it be civil rights.
Sure, a lot of people take libertarian positions on certain issues, but that's the difference between an actual libertarian and someone who can sound libertarian is that an actual libertarian adheres to the non-aggression principle.
Well, I mean, I do agree with that. I agree with that before I even knew what it was.
Well, but Ricky, then the other night on the air, you did admit that you think there should be a small government, and usually governments are funded by aggression.
Wait a minute now. I actually thought about that, and what Peakless was saying, and first of all, I came to a conclusion when it came to the tax. It could be like amplifying. It could be a donation.
Yeah, sure. If you can run it down. Yeah, that's true. In theory, that could exist. There could be a voluntary government. We don't have it yet.
I think people would do it. I think people would voluntarily put a little bit out to keep it going if they could.
I bet they would. Really I think that's probably true. Like, I think people would donate to keeping the roads clean and making sure the snow gets cleared up and clearing off car accidents from the roads and whatever other actual useful things that governments occasionally do. Ricky, thanks for the call tonight. Thanks again for the contribution there. Definitely appreciate it.
It's good to hear that he seems to say that he's listened to the show and it has changed his mind on a few things.
Yeah, he's thought about stuff. That's true. Amps.freetalklive.com if you want to go and join as Ricky has done. By the way, doing platinum level. So,
nice.
Thanks,
Ricky.
amps.freetalklive.com. We continue here. Hour number 3 is on the way, and maybe we'll talk about the meta news. Coming up, it's Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live.
The GoPro camera that's cost $300 is better than a Taser-made camera.
Yeah, so there are other competitors in the marketplace, and they weren't given a chance to even bid on that. I mean, that's good old boy cronyism, isn't it? You support that?
Are you opposed to free enterprise?
I am for free enterprise. I am against no-bid contracts. You see, free marketplaces have competition so that we find out if products are superior or not. In an area where you have no-bid contracts, you'll never find out what's better. You said that there was no coercion here.
Making the purchase can make that decision for themselves.
No, they cannot, because they're taking my tax money at the threat of my home. You said there was no coercion, and I will remind you that they will kick me and my family out on the street if I don't pay property taxes. To suggest that this money belongs to the police chief is just the kind of boot-licking that takes this country into fascism.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in Liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. NATO has condemned as, quote, totally unacceptable the attacks by protesters in Kosovo that have left some 25 of its peacekeepers injured. Police and NATO troops clashed with Serb demonstrators in the north, where there's been unrest over the installation of ethnic Albanian mayors. Nigeria's new president, Bola Tinubu, has been sworn in. The 71-year-old takes office following a disputed election and under pressure to quickly improve the economy and security in what is Africa's most populous country. Our Nigeria correspondent, Ajek Mangut, reports.
The president did appeal to Nigerians to join hands with him to ensure that there's sort of hope and to make Nigeria better than it is currently. And of course, he has said that he's going to be more of a servant leader, but he will ensure that he consults with Nigerians. And so we're likely to see him trying to win the trust of Nigerians and to also ensure that he delivers on the promises he made during the campaigns. What sort of strategy is he going to make in terms of addressing the insecurity that Nigeria is facing? How is he going to reduce the high rate of inflation?
US President Joe Biden's congratulated Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan on his re-election. He said he was looking forward to continuing to work together as NATO allies. Although Turkey's hold-up of NATO enlargement is one of several disagreements between the two countries. President Erdogan won just over 52% of the vote in an election that the opposition criticised as being deeply unfair. Uganda's President Museveni has signed into law the controversial anti-homosexuality bill, ignoring Western condemnation and concerns from rights groups. The new law, targeting the LGBTQ community, prescribes harsh punishments that include the death penalty and life imprisonment. Michael Beleke reports from Uganda.
Same-sex relations are illegal in Uganda, and those caught in the act could face up to 20 years in jail. Some extreme cases like aggravated homosexuality, which includes sex with a minor or having sex while HIV positive, will attract a death penalty. The decision by President Museveni has attracted praise from Ugandan lawmakers, arguing the law will protect the sanctity of family and defend the culture and aspirations of the local people. The anti-gay law has received worldwide condemnation, with Uganda's international development partners threatening to pull donor funds from the country.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking today at Monday's swearing-in of Bola Tinubu as the new president of Nigeria. After a very close election, he secured office with just 37% of the vote. It's the first time any Nigerian leader has come to power with the backing of less than half the electorate. He takes over from President Muhammadu Buhari, who leaves inflation and deep economic uncertainty in his wake. Bob McMahon is with America's Council on Foreign Relations.
Buhari squandered ample political capital that he came to office with as someone who was really seen as being able to clear through some of Nigeria's messy politics and cronyism, and didn't. The largest economy in Africa, a population that could be the world's third largest by 2050, according to some projections. And even with its problems, it's also, there's a great deal of dynamism around Nigeria. It's just, it's governance, and we have someone who campaigned under the theme of "it's my turn," which doesn't necessarily rouse you to feel like he's going to change things. But Tinubu, who's the former governor of Lagos State, is someone who is extremely well connected. He is, by some accounts, also considered to be a very strong judge of sort of talent, and might be capable of putting together a strong, cabinet that could help power the country through some of its problems.
The election will be remembered for the powerful performance of third-party candidate Peter Obi, who will remain in the wings, hoping for another opportunity to take power. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
Our main news again. NATO has condemned as, quote, totally unacceptable the attacks by protesters in Kosovo that have left some 25 of its peacekeepers injured. Nigeria's new president, Bola Tinubu's been sworn in. US President Joe Biden's congratulated Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan on his re-election, and Uganda's President Museveni has signed into law the controversial anti-homosexuality bill. And that's the latest feature story news. Kate Fisher reporting.
We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish a TV show where I travel across this great nation, eating pork in every one of our 50 states. Join me on my cross-country odyssey as I make our forefathers proud, reveling in life, liberty, and the pursuit of pork.
You can really taste the cooked pork.
This stuff is fantastic.
I'm a big salt fan.
Let's pork! We're tasting prime pork dishes in every state in the Union, and I couldn't be more excited for this once-in-a-lifetime tour. You're going to be right here with me, seeing everything I do and watching every pork I taste. I'm Jim Haggerty. You know me as the host of Today Now, but I've also eaten in a ton of restaurants. Now I'm heading out on the road. My mission? Find the best pork our country has to offer.
Watch Jim Haggerty's Porkin' Across America at youtube.com/theonion.
This is the Onion News Network.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. You can join the show and bring up whatever you want. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Joining you here tonight, it's Ian.
And it's Bonnie.
And Aria.
Of course, you can bring up absolutely anything you want to discuss here on broadcast radio and on podcast and live streaming in video and audio form. And some parts of the world, we're on satellite. By the way, our satellite channel in the United States is going to go away this summer, so just another reminder about that. I sent out a notice a couple of months back when I decided to cancel the service. We just didn't have enough people supporting it to keep it going.
The LRN.FM satellite?
Yeah, over North America. That one's going to go away. We'll continue with Africa, so okay. Sub-Saharan Africa will continue. And my justification there is we're closer to being able to afford the African satellite if we cut the American one, and more people in Africa still don't have the internet. So
they're also much more oppressed there. I mean, the ideas of liberty could be much more meaningful, assuming they can even translate what we're saying.
A fair number of them speak English in these countries.
Someone in the United States or Canada or Mexico or whatever, they probably have the internet. They're not restricted from Googling what is libertarianism or what does it mean to be free, whereas someone in, we just mentioned Uganda can't even be gay. So how else?
You can be gay, you just can't let anybody know.
Okay.
You can't get caught being gay.
They'll throw the death penalty at
or life imprisonment, I think, for most of them.
So in what other ways would they be restricting one's free speech and one's rights is ultimately my question.
And a lot of people in those countries have free-to-air satellite access, and that's where they'll find us there. So we are still on satellite in that case. You can go to freetalklive.com to learn more about the show and the stuff that we do. And also, want to say a big thanks to the folks over at Dash. Free Talk Live and this hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash. It's digital cash. Dash is a cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. Dash has some really cool features, including the Dash Direct app. Now, I have not had a chance to use Dash Direct because I'm not allowed to use cryptocurrency under my bail conditions, but Captain Kickass, or one of our weekend co-hosts, he is a big user of Dash Direct, and he was a user of Dash Direct prior to Dash becoming a sponsor because it's actually useful. It allows you to spend Dash at over 155,000 locations across the United States. This is a killer app because you actually get a discount. Now, each location has a different discount, so when you check the app, it'll show you what the discount level is. It could be as low as 2% or something, but it's sometimes 4, 5, 6%. It's pretty common to have it in the 4 to 6% range, and some of them it's high as 7, 8, or even 9%. So it just depends on what the merchant is and what the discount they want to offer. You can go and get the Dash Direct app on your Apple or Android App Store and check it out because it works, and it works really well. It's a great excuse to actually spend your cryptocurrency. So Dash, by the way, is one of the oldest cryptos, and it's widely available on exchanges and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get Dash. It's easy to use it. You can start by learning more at dash.org.
And they are now fixed to where you can use AnyPay with Dash.
Yes, you learned that this weekend, which is awesome.
It used to be even that my iPhone wouldn't let me use any Edge Wallet to pay anyone with AnyPay. So the vendor has AnyPay. I have Edge Wallet.
AnyPay is a merchant application where merchants have like a tablet or something at the front desk, and when you want to check out with crypto, they just punch the amount into AnyPay, and it allows you to pay with multiple different cryptos that the company wants to accept.
Yep, and recently my phone has just not been letting me do any of it because whatever reason they didn't update it for iOS, and somehow Dash actually got them to fix it all, and I've been able to use my iPhone to pay with Dash and different cryptocurrencies on AnyPay now.
Yep,
Dash is so fast.
Yep, that's part of the Dash Decentralized Autonomous Organization.
And $0 fee. Like today, I actually tested. I was going to pay for some food, $12, and I was just like, "Can I just see?" This was at Mighty
Moose Mart.
Yeah. In Keene, and I was just like, "Can I see how much the fee would be if I wanted to pay with Bitcoin?" So I did that. I scanned the code for Bitcoin first, but didn't send it. It was going to be $3.40, and then for $12 food. So then I went
That's like a 25% fee on a $12 meal.
Yeah. Just give me a government tax at that point. Jesus.
And then I went to Dash to, double check what it would be. It was $0 for Dash, and it went through right away. Like, once I slid the button to send my money from my Edge wallet, in 1 second there was a paid thing popping up on the other phone's screen for AnyPay.
It's crazy. $3 something fee, and less than 1 cent. Well under 1 cent for the fee for Dash. Very cool stuff. So thanks to the Dash Decentralized Autonomous Organization for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. You can visit dash.org to learn about Dash. That is dash.org. We can talk about the Meta open source story. I know, Aria, you had that story. That's on the way coming up. But Sarah is on the line, first up in New Mexico. Sarah, you're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead.
Oh, yes. I got put on so fast. Oh, I just want to say that today I went on to the Zero, what is it, Zero, on the website. It's supposed to be...
This conversation is going well, Sarah.
Zero Hedge?
Well, it's
You went on the website?
Wanting to have zero pedestrians. We even have a separate city website for it.
Zero pedestrians? What does that even mean?
Let me just see what I can find.
Zero
pedestrians?
Division zero. Supposedly, we want to have zero pedestrian and bicycle fatality.
Oh,
Is zero Mexican slang? I mean, no, New Mexican slang, excuse me, for like crack?
She finally said the rest of the sentence. They want to have zero fatalities.
Oh, okay.
So she went on that. She went on the face tweet.
Actually, it kind of started in Sweden or something, in the Nordic countries. That's why they call it that.
That's why they call it what?
The Vision Zero.
Vision Zero. Okay, yeah, I just found it as she was started to say, because she didn't say Vision Zero at any other point until
she
just
said
now.
it at one point, yeah.
Oh.
Did she?
Well, I didn't hear it. It says, what is an acceptable number of traffic deaths for my family? 0. Vision Zero is a data-driven, safe systems approach to create safer streets for all, whether walking, biking, driving, or taking transit, and regardless of age or ability.
Sarah's like she's like this close to discovering like discussion boards and Reddit and stuff. Sarah, there are like forums and stuff out there on the internet that are filled with people just like you who just want to post and rant all day long about traffic fatalities and pedestrians and stuff. Go join some of these. I'm sure you can find it r/pedestrians or whatever. Join one of these communities and just talk to these people all day, every day, like you want to do. Right?
I'm a little confused though. Like, what exactly is it? What is a safe systems approach to create safer streets for all? Like, is it going to be signs on the side of the road telling people which way to go?
I've scrolled down the page here. You're at City of Albuquerque's website.
Yep.
Is that right? So they've got some images here showing their vision. They want signs on the side of the road like "Slow down, Albuquerque," speed limit 20 miles an hour, like just bandit signs in people's front yards.
Don't they already have signs?
They want more
they have
signs.
Speed limit signs.
They want you to put signs out in your front yard.
They're not at the proper sign to roadway ratio or whatever.
They just want more signs.
Well, they should investigate Las Vegas, because the way that they have these strips set up in Vegas, it forces traffic to drive slowly. It's a nightmare to drive down, but there are bridges constantly. You can constantly cross the street without having to actually walk into the streets.
That's true, yeah.
And
the overpasses or whatever.
That's the way this should all be designed, right? It should be designed that you can cross the street without literally walking where the death machine is. I got to agree with Sarah on that.
Nope. They don't want to do it that way. They want to put people in jail easier. They have, on this website, it says Safe Speeds, automated speed enforcement.
Oh, Sarah loving this. Go ahead, Sarah.
Well, you know what? The thing is that the director, you could only email them. They only want to respond by emails because people that oppose the cameras or the vandalizing the camera, they don't want to hear from them in person. They'll hear from you in email. That's about the only way to.
So have you figured out how to send an email yet?
Well, we tried today on our tablet, but I think we did something wrong. So we'll get around how to send it out on email.
All right.
Kind of
is this giving you some kind of like flashbacks to when you were an IT helper over the phone?
No, thankfully not. Now, all of my clients at least knew how to send an email. So.
Thanks for the call, Sarah.
There are remedial computer classes out there, Sarah, probably at your local community college.
I was going to say probably free.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, probably not free.
I suspect there's some free ones, though.
Yeah, if you look
that's
around.
Tailored designed for elderly people.
Maybe the senior center or something.
I would highly recommend you. Because technology is important, Sarah. It drives the world, and it allows you to interact with the world. I know you got to use the computer to find it, but look around for one of these free computer classes that you might be able to find.
I'm surprised they're not actually proposing what you're talking about, Aria, with those crossovers that they have in Vegas.
I don't think the taxpayer should have to pay for it.
Because that's what I'm saying. They're going to be very expensive, and so some contractor would make a ton of money if they were hired to actually put those crossover walks, whatever the hell you call them, walking overpasses. So instead, they're talking about well-marked and separated bike lanes, signalized crossings, meaning they'll put special crossing signals up at the crosswalk portions, not at just like the normal intersections, but wherever there happens to just be a random crosswalk in the middle of the road, they'll put signals up to stop cars. Supposedly, and slower traffic speeds. They claim they're going to be putting in slower, quote, downtown safety zone speeds.
Yeah, I don't think any of that's going to matter.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to help much.
I would have disagreed with this even a week ago, but I'm starting to come around to the idea that we have surrendered too much public space to vehicles and traffic as it is, and that maybe there's a better way. Obviously not top down. The government shouldn't do anything about it. That goes without saying. The taxpayers shouldn't be on the hook for it, but it's not the most efficient way or an effective way to have people in a place.
I wish that it was just easier to just go and build your own city competing, because I would love to have like a what is the Amsterdam type town in New Hampshire. I have specifically thought of Amsterdam because I think that it's a town, I mean, it's a city, but it looks so nice with the surrounding area, and New Hampshire needs a city like that. Like Manchester, ugly. If you tried to put a Las Vegas in, or Las Vegas or any other big city that's kind of ugly in the middle of New Hampshire, kind of be a waste for the natural beauty. But Amsterdam keeps the natural beauty. There's not cars everywhere. There's people walking. But the thing is, you can't just go and buy a bunch of land and create your own city, because the government will try to kill you or something.
You're absolutely right. You should be able to. Because I imagine some enterprising individual out there, some creative individual, could design a beautiful city. Of course, then they wouldn't be able to pay for it and all that stuff. But like, there's ways, right?
I want to do it.
We could do this stuff.
I want to have my own New Hampshire megacity where there's karaoke bars and things like that. And there would just be no welfare. That's the thing. I think that cities would be totally fine if there was no welfare allowed. Like if we didn't have, it was all owned like by businesses or boards instead of, there wasn't a corporation calling itself the City of Bonnieville, whatever. Mm-hmm. Then we wouldn't have to have welfare for people, homeless people on the side of the road. Not that I'm not trying to be so anti-homeless people. I know it's like a really sore subject right now with the internet. Like that's like a big subject right now. People are like, we need to basically like kill homeless people for sport. I don't know if you guys have seen a lot of that.
But that said,
I saw someone make I know what you mean. I saw somebody make the point that Republicans consider everyone to the left of killing homeless for sport. And I've seen that phrase used here and there, but I don't know what was the catalyst of it or why it came about.
I don't really know what started it either, but I've been seeing it a lot recently. And like around the same time that there's been this whole talk of like the subways in New York being really dangerous. People are talking about like just homeless, crazy people just like congregating in cities. Well, that wouldn't really be a problem if we didn't allow welfare in our towns.
Well, I mean, homeless is an interesting discussion to have because on one hand, they are definitely an eyesore. If you're a business owner, you don't want to have some bum standing out in front of your front door trying to panhandle people, right? That's a real, negative if you're just trying to go shopping and some guy's hitting you up for his drug money. And so I get the reason why people don't want to have homeless people around. On the other hand, I also believe in compassion and helping people that need help. It's one of the reasons why I contribute to the local privately run homeless shelter here in Keene. But it would be interesting to see how an actual free market where there were no public properties, because that's where the homeless people tend to coalesce around, right?
I want a place that would actually show the difference between the people who want to hand up and want to hand out. Like, if there was no handouts, but you could easily go someplace if you genuinely needed help and find help to get on with your life and move up in this world, then the people who didn't want that and just wanted to be homeless on the side street and have, a little bit of money for drugs and food that day, well, they would leave. They'd be like, I can't get what I want out of here.
Especially if you actually had all private property. And that's the thing that libertarians advocate for, is not having government property, so-called public property. Now, keep in mind, 7-Eleven is open to the public, but it's still a private store. So if they decide they don't want you there, they can say, you got to leave.
But we probably would have some businesses, I think, that were offering places for homeless people to camp out.
Sure.
Like the, was it Hannaford's here in Keene that did that? They allowed their wooded area behind them to be used by the...
It was the property owner, actually, of that shopping center.
And we could have that in a free... I don't want to say free private city because I'm not Mark Edge, but we could have one of those in one of these cities that didn't have a government.
In a city in which private property rights were actually respected, wherein if somebody wants to have homeless people on their property, fine, let them have the homeless people there.
If you don't like it, don't shop there.
Right, and if the homeless people want to build a shanty in the woods that's completely a fire hazard, then let them do that. You don't need to have the government regulators come out there and force them to not have a shanty because it's not up to code. That actually happened here in Keene on the very property that you're talking about.
And that's ridiculous. If the property owners are allowing it, it should be allowed.
That's exactly the point I was going to make. If they build a shanty and they live in a shanty, then they're no longer homeless, are they?
Right.
I mean, we laugh, and it's silly but they have four walls and a roof over their heads. They are literally no longer homeless. What's the difference? That they don't have electricity? Amish don't have electricity, but some Amish don't have electricity. But we wouldn't say that they're homeless.
Yep.
And so they have a property owner who's like, yeah, I'll let you build a house on my property, and their house just happened to be a shanty. What's the problem?
Yeah, again, it's the risk is to the people who are living in the shanty, and if they're willing to take that risk, then that's fine. It'll keep them warm during the wintertime. If it catches fire, well, that's one of the risks that you take living in.
At least it'll be easy to escape. I mean, it's just a shanty, right? Just kick the wall over.
Right. So I definitely do not want to live in a place like a Portland or a Seattle where you literally have crazy levels of homeless people just living on the downtown streets with tents, tent city, drug city or whatever, just open heroin injecting. I mean, the videos that you can see online of these places are absolutely crazy.
I've never seen any, but it sounds horrifying. To say nothing of the malevolent architecture, right? Of the park benches that aren't enough for someone to sleep on and stuff like that. It's like, look, I understand you don't want homeless people there, but you don't have to be evil, right? Just don't be evil.
Just don't have public property.
Yeah, well, that solves the problem in that case. And I think it would be interesting to see how it worked out.
But if a property is supposedly public and owned by everyone, then yes, I think the spikes on benches or whatever they do are pretty ridiculous. Right. Yeah. It's supposedly owned by the homeless people, but nope, you can't sleep here. It's not true.
Now, in a private property society, how would homeless people be treated? I think we'd see different approaches, right? Some people would not be very friendly and, you're not allowed to be here, you got to get out, that kind of thing. And they likely would learn to not come back to that.
I think it's a little like jumping to a conclusion to even call that unfriendly. Maybe the homeless people are causing problems at this place and they don't want homeless people there. Maybe the homeless people aren't just somebody who is down on their luck. Maybe there's somebody who just is fine with being crazy on the side of the road, smoking cigarettes all day, not trying to get their life any better, not ever seeking help to get themselves better. I mean, I know people like this.
And it's difficult, even if they're not panhandling or asking for money outside of your business, right? Like, no one wants to walk past a homeless person, right? There's no way to do that without feeling bad for them, unless you just don't feel bad for other people. But I've never walked past a homeless person that I didn't feel bad about. And I would rather not have to think about that homeless person. I know what that says about me, but it's the same for everyone, right? We know that there are homeless people, but that doesn't mean we want to walk past them to get into Walmart or the grocery store or whatever, because we don't need it thrown in our face, that amount of human suffering.
I think there's just a huge difference between people who are just like, listen, I really need help, and people who are sometimes posing as that. That's like even more terrible to me. I hate people who are posing as someone who really needs help, and really they're just a drug addict, person who doesn't mind having a low quality of life or having no dignity.
Yeah, some people just like that.
Yep. I mean, there in Salt Lake City, there's the Salt Lake City Temple, and now they don't let anyone. No, I don't know if that's true, but I thought I had heard that they don't let anyone do this anymore. But a guy that I used to work with, he used to work at the Salt Lake City Temple doing some, I don't know, like maintenance or something, because he was a maintenance guy at my hotel. I think it was something like that. And he knew for a fact that these two guys that would panhandle right outside just to where the Salt Lake City Temple couldn't tell them to leave.
Right.
They would, every night they would go home in like their parked Mercedes and drive home. I mean,
that happens here in Keene.
That's a terrible kind of person. But then there's also like the people who are posing as someone who just needs help. Like their sign will say something like, I'm a single mom and I just need to get food for my kid. But really they just want to go buy crack cocaine or whatever.
Sure.
I have a lot more respect for the homeless people, and I don't know how they live this way, but some of them just want to be homeless.
Some do.
I think of like Will Coley, who used to be on the show. His sister, he mentioned that she was one of these people who she just preferred being homeless. I couldn't live that way, but there's nothing wrong with that if that's the kind of life that person wants to live.
And if people want to give her money because obviously she's going to need money in the world we live in to survive, then they want to and stuff. But it's another thing to just be like, well, it's public property. I can stand here if I want. I just don't think there should be public property where there's people who just choose to not work and pay for their own living to just be standing there, and we all have to deal with them.
I think you would see in a city that actually had all private property, you would likely see homeless people pushed to the periphery, which is, where they belong. And
or the ones that actually need help would get help.
Well, right. If you're not obviously homeless, right? If you're a homeless person but you're looking for help, then you can walk to the place that is going to provide you with the help, whatever the center is or the voluntary organization is that provides that, and no one's going to question you. But if you're standing, like you said, smoking cigarette after cigarette, doing some heroin out in the open, laying down against the bricks on the side of the building for hours, then somebody's going to figure out that you don't belong there, right? So, like, there's the person who has some direction in their life, and then there's the person who's a total loser and they're hitting people up for money or whatever they're doing. They don't belong there. Those people are going to get moved along, and they're going to be told to not come back. And if those people want to live on the outskirts of town where somebody doesn't care about that, then by all means, they should be able to do that. I think it'd be interesting to see how it all ended up panning out. Because, man, it's not just about not wanting to see the human suffering, but if you've ever been to, like, Manhattan or something and you walk by a homeless guy, sometimes it just smells like urine.
Yeah.
Because they've just been peeing there out in the street, and it's just like, ugh, it's gross. There's more coming up here in moments. It's Free Talk Live.
I've been told no in many different ways.
I give you an order and you're going to obey it.
George, you can go this way.
You can't do that and you have to leave here.
You cannot bring signs into the rally.
Walk with me. Well, I'm comfortable here, actually. Whoa, hey, who do you think you are? Excuse me.
There is no video and audio allowed in this office.
No, I have work today.
You ain't gonna make it.
Wait a minute.
Holy crap.
Whoa. Hey! Oh my God! Unbelievable! Why are you running from me? Because you scared me. What am I being detained for?
You're being served.
What is this?
You're being served.
What is this? Bureaucrats have a funny way of telling people no.
That's the sound of the men working on the chain.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. NATO has condemned as, quote, totally unacceptable the attacks by protesters in Kosovo that have left some 25 of its peacekeepers injured. Police and NATO troops clashed with Serb demonstrators in the north, where there's been unrest over the installation of ethnic Albanian mayors. Nigeria's new president, Bola Tinubu, has been sworn in. The 71-year-old takes office following a disputed election and under pressure to quickly improve the economy and security in what is Africa's most populous country. Our Nigeria correspondent, Ajek Mangut, reports.
The president did appeal to Nigerians to join hands with him to ensure that there's sort of hope and to make Nigeria better than it is currently. And of course, he has said that he's going to be more of a servant leader, but he will ensure that he consults with Nigerians. And so we're likely to see him trying to win the trust of Nigerians and to also ensure that he delivers on the promises he made during the campaigns. What sort of strategy is he going to make in terms of addressing the insecurity that Nigeria is facing? How is he going to reduce the high rate of inflation?
US President Joe Biden's congratulated Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan on his re-election. He said he was looking forward to continuing to work together as NATO allies. Although Turkey's hold-up of NATO enlargement is one of several disagreements between the two countries. President Erdogan won just over 52% of the vote in an election that the opposition criticised as being deeply unfair. Uganda's President Museveni has signed into law the controversial anti-homosexuality bill, ignoring Western condemnation and concerns from rights groups. The new law, targeting the LGBTQ community, prescribes harsh punishments that include the death penalty and life imprisonment. Michael Beleke reports from Uganda.
Same-sex relations are illegal in Uganda, and those caught in the act could face up to 20 years in jail. Some extreme cases like aggravated homosexuality, which includes sex with a minor or having sex while HIV positive, will attract a death penalty. The decision by President Museveni has attracted praise from Ugandan lawmakers, arguing the law will protect the sanctity of family and defend the culture and aspirations of the local people. The anti-gay law has received worldwide condemnation, with Uganda's international development partners threatening to pull donor funds from the country. Michael Baleke reporting from Kampala.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live. You can join the show here, and you can bring up what you want. We got time for you. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Ian, Bonnie, Aria here tonight. You can join us online anytime over at freetalklive.com. And if you want to support the show, as Ricky apparently did, pointing it out to us earlier tonight, you can join us over at amps.freetalklive.com. That's amps.freetalklive.com. You can sign up there to help us advertise, market, promote, and support Free Talk Live. It is a way for you to get behind the show for as little as $5 a month. We really appreciate the support. It helps us out, helps us spread the ideas of liberty. So if that's worth $5 a month to you, then you can help us and get some perks like access to the AMP-only podcast, which has the full radio show without any recorded ads. You can go to amps.freetalklive.com to get signed up there. That's amps.freetalklive.com. Major Payne is on the line in Michigan. Go ahead, Major.
Hey, guys. Yeah, this country has a long and sordid history of making hobos, not only being unkind to them, but all through history, ever since they laid railroad tracks. There's been a hobo camp somewhere outside of town, usually by the dump, so it's convenient for them to scrounge whatever they need.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just, shunned from society, basically like a little bastard leopard society or something.
Yeah, it's sad, man. I don't know how to fix this sort of thing, but you're right. And I do it too. We all have a different way of looking at homeless people, that they're othered. And I don't know how to even begin to fix that. Even if I fix
got
it
their
for
own
me.
story, like some people are homeless because they had a bad run of luck and they couldn't pay their bills, but they want to get back on their feet quickly. Other people are like you said, like Will's sister, who they just like living without a house, and that's a totally different type of homeless person. And then there's the drug addicts, right? That just are total losers and they have no money because they spend it all on drugs.
And back in the day, I don't know how far back Major Payne's talking about, but there wasn't any such thing as like taking care of your mental health. So there's probably a lot of people that were just crazy
yep.
that just
that's another category.
Can take care of themselves. I mean, I know plenty of people not plenty of people. I can think of one person that is just crazy and letting their craziness overtake their life to where they just are like, yeah, I don't need to work or anything. But luckily she has a boyfriend that she lives with. I don't know what's going to happen to her if one day he gets tired of her S.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a new twist in this river. I think it was Obama shut down all the insane asylums, put them all on the streets. They decided they shouldn't pay for them, but we all should, even though we all had been the whole time.
Yeah, I don't know. Those could be bad too.
I don't know what to do about people who are just like crazy, right? Like
it's really hard.
Yeah. What?
Well, libertarianism does not apply. The non-aggression. This is one of the failures of the non-aggression principle. We've talked about this before. It's a pretty good principle, and across the board, it pretty much works. But when it comes to someone who does not care about their own safety or the safety of others, then something has to be done about a person who's going to possibly harm.
Why would that not apply? Why would that mean the NAP isn't applying? The NAP is applying because you're stopping them from harming others.
But the problem comes in when they're trying to harm themselves. And if it's somebody that you care about, if somebody you care about is going and spiraling down into, some sort of insanity or whatever, and you love them and you don't want them to like kill themselves or something, then you may have to use aggression against them to restrain them from killing themselves. And that's something that has happened. I've been involved in situations where this one guy across the street was completely crazy because he had not slept. And I was also crazy because of, not at the same time, but
would
because
you
I
call
had
it a
not
nap
slept.
violation if a really drunk person was going to walk off a cliff, or a really drunk person was going to light themselves on fire because they were so drunk they didn't realize what they were doing, and then you stopped them?
Well, there's a difference between someone who's like
that's
imminently
aggression.
going to harm themselves and someone who's like just crazy and they have the potential to harm themselves or harm someone else.
There is a difference there, yeah.
Yeah, but the person you were talking about was imminently going to harm himself, so you
He
stopped
could
him.
have. I mean, the guy that we stopped was absolutely going crazy.
And he had a
wasn't
gun.
threatening anyone. He hadn't gotten to that point. There was no reason to believe he necessarily would, but he had a gun on his hip at the time. So
A person
the
who's going
neighbor
crazy
across
because he
the
hasn't
street and
slept in a couple days and has a gun on his hip, I think that constitutes the ability to take the gun away from him because he could hurt someone else.
That is an aggressive move
It's
because
not
he could do
aggressive.
something.
It's
It
defensive.
absolutely is.
It's
No, it is
defensive.
not.
Yes, it
That's
is.
like saying a preemptive strike against another country is defensive.
No, it's not, because another country haven't slept in 2 days and
But
won't know what they're doing.
The guy that's got his hand over the big red button is a psychopath, and he doesn't care about other people's lives, and he might just launch a nuke. We might as well, with that. Therefore, we've justified now bombing his country to smithereens before
No,
he
because
can bomb
that's other
us.
people that aren't him. It absolutely justifies killing him. You think it doesn't justify just killing a politician if they're threatening to kill you? I think it's justified.
No. We're not talking about someone who's threatening to kill anybody here. Remember, we're talking about someone who has not made any threats whatsoever, but we know they're crazy and they have a weapon in their possession.
I am saying that I think it's defensive before it happens because they aren't in their right mind to take
Neither
that
is
away
You don't
from
know
them.
they'll hurt anyone.
You don't know that they will, but are you going to just wait for it to happen?
It may not
They're
happen.
crazy.
In which case you just disarmed them without cause.
Yeah, and that's like a super drunk person that can't be accountable for their own actions.
I understand your point, but you're not. What you're talking about is defending an aggressive act, which is to say using aggression to stop this person from having a gun. You're using force against that person.
But you're not going to just make them not have a gun forever.
No, that's
when
true.
they sober up, when they get
They can have it
sleep,
back.
they'll have it back.
No
but it
doubt
still
about it.
requires aggression to take the gun from them.
Yeah,
Whether you
you're
think it's
still using
justified
The
or not.
question isn't if it's justified, it's if it's defense or not. And
But it's not
it
defense.
could
defense.
totally be defense.
That's a preemptive strike, Bonnie.
It could be
If they're
justified
just-
aggression.
If they're in their own house and
But-
and they're super crazy, haven't slept in a couple days, it's one thing. But this guy was like climbing on your roof, wasn't he?
He ended up doing that.
He's
at one
climbing on
point.
your
Yeah,
roof
he was
with
crazy.
a gun. He's trespassing. He's crazy.
I
I
think
would
we had
take his
taken
gun
the
and
gun
I
from him
wouldn't
by
feel
then.
like I aggressed on him.
We took the gun from him before he started climbing on the roof.
But he was that crazy. He
Yes,
was that
he was
level
that
of crazy. He was that out of his mind.
But it's still aggression. It's also
It's not
aggression. If you
aggression.
take
It's not
the
aggression to
person-
take a 3-year-old a gun away from a 3-year-old.
Yes,
is it?
it is.
No, it's not.
Absolutely, it is. Anytime
can't
you use
control-
force,
They cannot.
anytime you use force against somebody, you're using
It's
aggression.
not using. Anytime you're. No, that's absolutely not true. You can use force against somebody who is threatening you, and that's not
Okay,
aggression.
I'm talking about
so,
aggressive
and I'm saying
force.
that
That's where
this
you're
is,
starting it. Aggressive force is when you start it.
And you're saying that it's never okay to take a gun away from a 3-year-old.
I'm saying it absolutely is okay, and I'm saying this is where the non-aggression principle does not apply.
I think
The
it
non-aggression
absolutely
principle-
applies. This person.
You're just bending the definition of aggression then in order to try to pretend like it's not applying here.
No, I'm not, because a little kid can't make the decision themselves, a 3-year-old, to understand that if I shoot somebody, it could kill them unless they have really good parents.
Okay.
That's one thing. Let's say a drunk 3-year-old, absolutely no possible way that this person knows what they're doing.
There we go.
You can take the gun away from a drunk 3-year-old because they do not have the capacity to have ownership over their own actions in that moment. And they could
Still
hurt
an
someone.
aggressive act.
It's not aggressive because it's defensive. If they
No.
could hurt you,
The child has not, as you pointed out, the child has not actually done anything, and the crazy person
they're just
had not done
walking around
anything.
with a gun, swinging around in their baby hand, and they're drunk.
That's a really bad situation. You should stop
It's
that.
a
from,
horrifying
You should stop that
situation.
from happening, and that violates the non-aggression principle.
No, it doesn't.
And it's totally
no, it doesn't.
fine.
It
It's
doesn't
totally fine
violate
to
the
do that.
non-aggression principle for a 3-year-old that has a gun and is drunk to be disarmed.
Sure, it does. In the
No,
same
it
way that you would
doesn't.
violate the non-aggression principle if you push somebody out of the way of a coming bus to stop them from getting hit by the bus. You saved their life, but you violated the non-aggression principle.
I don't actually think that's true either.
Okay, well, you don't understand what the definition of aggression is, or at least you're not agreeing with me and Aria as to what the definition is.
It's aggression to push someone out of the way, and they don't see that a van is coming.
Correct. That would be aggression by
definition. It would be
Yeah,
aggression
the idea
to
is that your intentions don't matter. Like what you're literally doing is you are literally putting your hands on them and physically moving them without their consent.
You're defending them, and
you're presuming that they would appreciate that in the future, but you didn't have time to have a chat with them about whether or not you could do that. You just took it upon yourself to use force against another human being.
But using force isn't always aggression. The intention absolutely matters.
In the case of starting
when you move a box, you're using force.
But the difference between using force in defensive purposes and using it for other purposes, where you try to start something, it's the aggressor who starts a thing.
But it's not harming the person to be pushed out of the way of the bus unless
you might scrape them when they fall to the ground.
They might break their arm.
Yeah,
it might. You're the one presuming that.
You don't know what's going to happen when you use that level of force against somebody. You're just trying to save that person from getting hit by the bus.
But the way you're defining force is basically just anytime you put action into the world.
That's what force is, yes.
So is it aggression every time I move that chair? No.
No, the chair doesn't have
Is it aggression anytime I shake someone's hand when they didn't verbally give me the...
yeah, that would be if they didn't put their hand out.
Then you're using the word aggression wrong.
If somebody doesn't put their hand out and you went and you grabbed their hand, that's an aggressive act.
I didn't say that you went out and grabbed their hand. I said I didn't verbally get permission.
Well, there are ways to consent to something that aren't verbal.
Okay, what if somebody's facing away from you and you just tap their shoulder and say, "Hey, it's me." Yeah, that's aggression. You touched their shoulder without asking them, and they didn't look, and you took it upon yourself to touch them, Ian.
Technically, that's an assault, yeah.
No, it's not.
If it's unwanted, then
I
it
think
is an
the
assault.
intentions are absolutely important in whether or not it's assault. You would seriously think it was fine for the police to shoot somebody for tapping somebody else on the shoulder?
No, I don't think that would be fine at all. There has to be an appropriate response. So generally when you have somebody using an aggressive act against somebody, the only response that it's acceptable is that is concomitant with the force that was used. So if somebody taps you on the shoulder, they don't have the right to turn around and jack you in the face. Okay? That's just not an acceptable use of force in response. Not an acceptable defensive force.
It doesn't make that thing aggression. I don't. You have not convinced me that that's aggression yet.
It's not the level of an aggression as slugging somebody.
No, but you haven't convinced me that it's aggression at all to tap someone on the
personal space.
Shoulder. I don't think that violating someone's personal space is necessarily aggression. If somebody comes and stands next to me in a public place and I think that they smell bad, no, even if they don't smell bad, if somebody comes up and stands next to me in a public place and I don't like that person and I don't want them standing next to me, it's not aggression until I say, like, "Hey, dude, get out of the way." And then they're like, "No, I'm standing right next to you." Yeah, that'd be aggression. But if they just walked up right next to me and didn't know I didn't like them, it's not aggression.
Well, standing next to you wouldn't be, but if they...
That's invading my personal space. That's what Ian said makes the other thing aggression.
Well, you literally touched them.
Okay, standing to where we're shoulder to shoulder. Is that aggression? If there's a
not if you're
big
in like
crowd
a
of people,
concert or something like that. No, I think in that case there's an
you're violating that person's...
There's a social acceptance of being
What if we're just in the park and there's
someone?
A bunch of people together and someone comes up and stands next to you? Someone you don't like or want next to you, they don't know that. You haven't verbally told them that.
Isn't
and touching shoulder to shoulder is what I just said. That's touching you.
Well, was it an accident or was it done on purpose?
They didn't know that you were not going to like it when you tapped them on the shoulder when you're facing the other way, so it could be an accident that you didn't like it.
But you should always have someone's consent before you touch them, right?
What's that, Major?
It sounds like a little kid's game. I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you. I remember when my kids used to tease each other doing that kind of stupid.
I'm making it as simple as possible so we can define things. Right. That's all.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think you should. We don't always do it, obviously, right? We assume that touching someone's shoulder or tapping them on the shoulder, it's such a minor aggression that they're not going to flip out and break our wrist for doing so. But yes, in an ideal society, you'd be like, "Excuse me, and get their attention without physically touching them. Because some people, I work with some of these, they hate being touched.
I understand that.
It's a complex for them, and it will send them running and crying and stuff.
Right? I understand that, and I've met people like that too that really don't like being touched, but I still would not ever define it as aggression, even if you didn't know that this was somebody who really doesn't like being touched, and you just saw them, you're like, touched them on the shoulder and said, hey, it's me. Hey, I just wanted to, whatever. I don't know. I'm just like thinking of why you would need to touch someone on the shoulder. Even if they really didn't like it, I wouldn't consider that aggression because you're not harming them. You're not taking anything from them.
Their consent is
what
always
is
going
taken
to be
from
aggression.
them?
Yeah.
What's taken from them?
Their bodily right to not be touched and to control who touches their body.
Okay, so here's the definition of aggression for you, Bonnie, from the dictionary. Hold on, Major Payne, hold on. So, definition of aggression is any offensive action, attack, or procedure, an inroad or encroachment. So, while a touch on the shoulder certainly doesn't rise to the level of an attack.
Are you going to finish the definition?
That's definition 2. That was the finished definition. It certainly does not rise to the level of an attack, and I don't think anyone would say that's an attack, but it is an encroachment upon that person's bodily self. And, it's not a big deal when you just touch somebody on the shoulder. For most people, you're probably not going to get somebody to hit you in response to that, but it is an encroachment upon that person.
I think anything somebody did to harm me for touching them on the shoulder back is the actual act of initiation of aggression. If I just see someone didn't know they didn't like me.
I would say that would also be an aggression if you can't turn around and slug somebody for touching you. I don't think that would be considered a defensive move.
I would say even if somebody just went
touching on the shoulder does not require a defensive move.
If it doesn't require a defensive move, I don't see how it could possibly be aggression. Like if somebody even
knocking
just
your hand away, for example, like,
that
don't touch me.
I would say that's the aggression there too.
No, I would say that's legitimate in that case.
Don't touch me and moving my hand forcefully.
The amount of force or whatever, the amount of violence that is necessary to stop the unwelcome act from happening.
That's what's necessary, right?
Is defense.
In this case, I don't think that there's really any defense against it because the person just tapped you. It's over. You can't do anything about it. I didn't say somebody comes and leaves their hand on you. That's a lot weirder.
Well, it depends on how fast your reflexes are and how fast they're moving their hand, I guess. Right? Like, you could absolutely knock it away or something.
I could catch somebody if I was paying attention, for sure.
So I don't know.
What else, Major?
Yeah, everybody on Earth would think you guys were the weird ones for that, but
Maybe.
I know that's a
that's why libertarians
I'm not
are
saying
weird.
that's logical. That's an appeal to most people thinking, but I'm just not going to agree that that's aggression.
Okay.
I'll give it to you. I'm definitely weird, so I'm not surprised to hear it.
And I know lots of people don't like that. That's why I personally wouldn't go and do that, but there's no circumstance on Earth where that's aggression that needs to be defended against. And I think the person in the wrong would be the person who slapped my hand off.
I think your mistake is by thinking that all aggression needs to be defended against, and it doesn't.
Yeah,
in most cases it does, but in
worst
some
case
cases
scenario,
it
if you are one of these people that's like triggered or whatever by someone touching you, knocking their hand away, it's like commiserate to the act, right? And I guess that's technically defense, but I don't think
that
anyone
would be an acceptable defense. That would be the only level of acceptable defense. It would be to brush the person away. To turn around and to slug them would be an escalation.
And I don't think Ian or me or anyone would look at that situation and go, all right, well, this was a felonious assault.
No,
and
for sure
You
not.
called it an assault. That's why
That's the legal definition.
I said felonious assault as well.
It's the legal definition of a battery, actually, I think technically would be the term. But anyway, it depends on the jurisdiction. Major Payne, you've just been listening here. Go ahead.
Yeah, can we get back close to the original topic? We were talking about the homeless. You guys know what a shanty town is, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, you ever heard of a Hooverville?
Yes, it was during Hoover, during the Great Depression and stuff.
During when the banks all failed and everything went to hell in a handbasket. Well, the people that really got screwed, all of New York Central Park was at Hooverville, and all around Washington they built a Hooverville. And what it was the U.S. veterans from World War I had been promised a bonus for sticking out the whole hitch, right? Re-signing up or whatever, fighting to the end. And they'd never gotten a dime. And, the bottom fell out of everything, and they're living in shacks by the river, and they don't own the river. And, so and the way the banks are going right now, we might be having another Hooverville, but we'll call it Biden Holla.
One other thing I was thinking about in this concept of not having, public property is like, how does this work? Like if we did have a city, and let's keep things simple, let's say it's just, 10 miles by 10 miles, it's just perfectly square and everybody's bought their lots in perfect squares and whatever, and everything is privately owned. How do you get from person A's house to person B's house without literally trespassing on someone's private property?
Well, you would have to have people who allowed for people to walk on their property.
No, I think at least in like what the thing I was talking about, like if I made Bonnieville in New Hampshire, I think that somebody would need to own a large swath of that and be responsible for roads and sidewalks and stuff like that.
Yeah, you have to create easements.
It would be private property or public property. It would be private property, but it would be bought and developed and maintained with the idea that people are allowed to use it. Either they had to pay, or there'd be some other more creative method for people to, or for the person who owns it to be reimbursed for the labor they put into the land there.
Yeah, it's hard to say how, there's been a lot of theory, right?
A bunch of
theory about
square
roads.
Campsites that everybody owns their own just wouldn't be able to work without people, cooperating together.
That's true as well. That such a situation would really never come up organically. Thanks. It was just a random thought I had, and you both.
The businesses on the roads want customers, right? So they have the incentive to ensure that whatever thoroughfares are connecting these businesses together are going to be welcoming to people to transact and drive or walk on those places, and hopefully they'll be innovative and come up with ways that keep people safer, that would make people like Sarah happy at the same time, with also not doing crazy stupid stuff like arresting people for speeding or driving without a permit or anything like that. So I think it would be interesting to see the kind of innovation that the market would come up with. What kind of road types there would be, or different technologies that have never actually been tried, but people have talked about over the years with regard to
flying
roads.
Cars.
Yeah, that's another potential option. Absolutely.
That one seems like it would be almost certain if it wasn't for like the FAA and government regulation in general.
I've got two more things to say about the aggression conversation in the last 2 minutes.
Thank you, Major, for the call tonight. I appreciate it, man.
Two things. Two things have to come into play when we decide if it's aggression tapping somebody's shoulder. Two different things. One is common sense, and two is the fact that we are humans and we are animals, but we have a neocortex it's the newest part of the brain. A lot of animals don't have it at all, reptiles, and it's what makes us human. And
dogs don't have a neocortex?
I don't remember. I don't know exactly if a dog does. I didn't look into every brain type, but it's the newest out of human evolution. It's the newest part of the brain. That's why it's called the neocortex. It makes you human. We have the ability for higher thinking. That's what I said. I don't know.
Okay.
I know dogs have a pineal gland. I'm not sure if that's in.
But I mean, some other animals have it.
Some other animals do. Reptiles don't. They just have like basically the amygdala.
Apparently, all mammals have a neocortex.
It isn't what makes us humans.
Okay. Well, for whatever reason, we have the biggest ones, and we have access and the ability to it more than other animals do. I didn't know that every other animal had it, but I knew it's the newest in human evolution. It doesn't really matter about the brain type. What I'm trying to say is we're humans, and we have the only reason that we've risen above the other animals and kind of dominated them is because we have the ability for higher level thinking, and we have the ability for things like common sense to arrive. It's common sense that if I'm looking towards you and we're like, okay, the whole sex thing. Do we need to have a written contract between each other that we both consent?
I hope not, but that's the direction things are going.
It's common sense to know we're making out, where things are going from one thing to another, and it happens, and we have sex. It's you didn't have to have a written contract.
Agreed.
I don't have to have a written contract that if you're in public and you're at Pork Fest and you're standing there and I walk up and tap you on the shoulder, that it was okay for it to not be aggression. We're human beings. We're civil enough to where if we're in public, or I'm walking up and I reach out and go to shake your hand, I don't need a written contract between you saying it's okay first, or else you're gonna pop back at me. And I know that punching is going to be an escalation of violence, but I don't have to worry about that because we're not gorillas.
Don't think that you do.
But when you're making out with someone, you are already engaged in committing an act with them. Like you are already doing a thing together.
That doesn't necessarily mean that person
it
is
doesn't
okay with
necessarily
sex.
mean they want sex. No, but it does sort of help you think that consent could be implied. But when you're out in public with someone, you're not engaging in any activity with them whatsoever.
Well, plus we're also talking about what's acceptable socially here. We're talking about what's acceptable socially. And it may be acceptable socially most of the time to touch somebody on the shoulder. But what if somebody comes up and cups your rear end in that case, right? It's just a touch. Out of time for tonight. The numbers, we'll tell you that tomorrow. Ari and I will be back probably with Mark tomorrow night. Online in the meantime, you can join us over at freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. In addition to being one of the world's first cryptocurrencies, Dash was the first crypto project to have a decentralized autonomous organization that to this day continues to improve and promote Dash. Every month, 10% of the mining rewards go into a treasury. Anyone with one Dash to spend can put forward a proposal to the Dash masternodes to vote on. The masternodes vet the proposals and decide which ones move forward and are funded by the Treasury. In fact, that's exactly how we got this sponsorship. Nowadays, DAOs are plentiful, but Dash paved the way by doing it first, nearly a decade ago. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at dash.org. Thanks to the Dash DAO for